Welcome to the Threshing Floor Podcast, your premier destination for discussion and commentary on the redemption trading card game and its community. Kick back and relax as we catch you up on the latest news, tournament results, and deck building strategies to take your game to the next level. Now, here are your hosts, John Hendricks and Agur the Wise.
All right, guys, that is right. He's Agur the Wise. I'm John Hendricks. This is the all-new Threshing Floor Podcast.
Let's go.
I think it's fair to say all new, considering all of the changes that we've got in store for you guys. But, man, does that hype you up or what, Jake?
I'm hyped. Let's go. Hype train, let's do this.
Absolutely. So I said all new podcast, and that's because pretty much anything you know about the podcast has probably been touched up, refined, or at least it's in our thoughts to kind of touch it up a little bit. So I did mention that Jake is here, so we do have not Brad on the podcast. So that's one of the biggest changes, is that we have a new co-host for the podcast. We've got Mr. Agur the Wise, as his screen name is on Discord, but he is Jake. So I guess welcome to the podcast officially.
Howdy, howdy.
I am excited for all of the changes, and we finally get to talk about it kind of openly and share them with you, the listener out there. I've shared a bunch of thoughts behind some of the changes, and I wrote an article for the episode that we had to skip a couple of weeks ago, but it feels like I can decompress a little bit and get it off the chest and kind of put it out there for you guys to hear, see, and give us feedback on some of these changes. So I'm excited for it. With that, I would like to say that the core of the podcast, I hope, doesn't change. I think the goal when I first set out with the podcast was for this to be kind of a forum for discussion on the game, where the community has a platform to talk about the game. We can bring on guests and things to talk about our honest and open opinions about the game. Everybody has an opinion. They're not all the same. Mm-hmm. So I do want to maintain that. And I think that we will do that through these changes, but we just want to create the most polished product. I spent a lot of time talking to you about this, Jake, about the fact that we want the podcast, if someone hears it that doesn't know about the game, for it to have a polished sound, a good look, things that represent the community well in the game, and could potentially, be a first experience for someone hearing about the game of redemption. So a lot of that was kind of the forethought of a lot of these changes. But in all of that, I'm really excited about it.
Super exciting, man. This is awesome.
Yeah. What are you most excited about to share with the people?
Most excited about, there's so much. There's so many new things. Oh, man, all the segments, everything's crazy. That's cool.
Segments, the segment intros, like the intro we just heard coming into this podcast.
Fire, bro.
That is so much better than my voice telling you about the podcast episode.
Definitely.
Because what it was creating for me and Brad was we'd come into the podcast. You've already heard everything it's about. So now if we do any of this kind of back and forth opening talk, which is common on a lot of podcasts, it's just keeping you away from what you already know about the podcast versus us telling you here about it. And it also requires an extra step of recording that every week to put on the podcast. But I guess with that, we can create kind of a roadmap of this episode. We've got obviously lots of changes to go over. Some of those changes are just kind of the layout of the podcast and things. Some of them are additions to the podcast. Some of them are telling you about some major changes, not just the co-host change, but we have another major change that we've been keeping tucked in our sleeves a little bit. But we're going to pull that out, and we're going to show you the rabbit in the hat in a minute, and we'll talk about that. But a lot of this is just a bunch of new stuff and new layout for the podcast. I don't know exactly how we're going to work our way through this episode. We're going to obviously do it, but we're kind of flying by the seat of our pants a little bit. That's not necessarily a bad thing, because it's a lot better than coming on and not having an idea of what we're going to talk about. I mean, now we know exactly what we're going to talk about, and we're going to struggle to fit it all in without skipping something. So we'll just kind of move right in and talk about the biggest change, and that is the fact that we do have a new co-host. So I'm sure there's questions out there with that about why we made the change. And unfortunately, Jake, you can't really speak to this right now. This is kind of my burden to bear. So I'll do that, and then I'll kind of share with you guys what I think that Jake brings to the table for the podcast, which I think a lot of that is kind of self-explanatory as well. But getting to some of the why is kind of the fact that if you review our last year, so it's been roughly a year since I asked Brad to join the podcast as co-host. It's hard to believe it's been a year. It has not been a year worth of episodes because we have not been able to, churn out those episodes in a consistent manner like we hoped and, set our goal out to do. I was coming off of kind of a down period in recording as it was. I thought having my boy on the podcast would kind of excite me and get me excited for it, but our schedules were just so limited compared to each other, and he's got his busy ministry schedule. Also being a father of 3 young girls, I'm a father of 1 boy. Like, I feel like that doesn't require as much attention as 3 young girls at home. And then his wife wants him around. My wife, sometimes she'd rather me go away. So I have more flexibility than he does. I don't have the strict requirements for my time. So I can stay up hours of the night and work on podcast stuff, whether that be editing or trying to record or anything like that. But the busy schedule really got to us with Brad. And unfortunately, I think that was kind of the first thing that opened it up to where I felt like we could benefit from someone that had a little bit more open availability. Plus, it's also the fact that him being so busy doesn't allow him to be involved in the community, like on Discord and stuff, as often as he would like, or that someone that's, trying to record a podcast and stay on top of things probably needs to be. So that's where Jake was, I guess, just chilling out there in the great state of Texas. And I observed every day in the community, you were chiming in on a conversation, you were starting conversations, you were in the card creation channel, and just a lot of the activity seemed to revolve around you. And I thought to myself, man, I tried to get you on the podcast a year ago as a guest, and I was like, that didn't work out, but maybe somehow he'd just rather do it all the time. So reached out, you took some time, thought about it. I had a couple of other avenues I wanted to go through and just check. I will be honest and upfront. You weren't the first option for the podcast. I did have another option. I had an option. He did not give me the time of day. I thought that Booster Jones would be great for the podcast, but that could also be the fact that me and Brian work so well together to pry information out of Chris. I thought we could always be on top of new things happening.
That's awesome.
But he's got his huge play group up there and his job there at the school, his family situation as well. So it was one of those to where schedules maybe wouldn't line up. He kind of in a friendly way shot me down, which is fine, because then I started analyzing, and the next name I thought of, that's when I realized that you would be a good fit potentially. And I recorded the episode with John Early and Tyler Stevens a couple of weeks ago, episode number 75, when Brad was out of town. And I mentioned to those guys that I thought that you could potentially be a good fit. And they told me that I should make the effort and do the due diligence and see if maybe making a change was in the best interest of the podcast. So it was my idea, and then they just kind of was the confirmation that I should do that to potentially better the product overall. So that brings us here to you being on the podcast, listeners getting to, I guess, hear you a little bit more than they read you, I guess, currently on Discord, but some of those thoughts that you have and things can be fleshed out a little bit more, and you can brainstorm a little bit more with an open mic. And I mean, that's what podcasts are all about. It's all about talking and, taking these ideas and taking them from thoughts that we have as individuals to open discussion points, and being able to talk and get other people's thoughts on them and talk about other people's ideas and things. Just a free exchange of ideas here on an open forum podcast. And that's kind of what it was intended to be. And I'm hoping that we can get back to that and maintain consistent episode releases. So I think one of the best things that you bring to the table is you're on top of everything. You understand the current game. You're reading, I guess, meta shifts. You're coming up with ideas on, I don't know, like, what are you brainstorming now? Some kind of taunt deck where you can punish an opponent for crazy. Just existing.
Mm-hmm.
Not to put you on the spot here, but what are you most excited about in your role as co-host now to bring to the listeners? Now that you, instead of interacting with them on Discord, can do it in a more open way here on the podcast.
Yeah, like I've always enjoyed this podcast. I remember getting into the scene and like getting all the podcasts and just going through them step by step, like one by one, going through all of them. I enjoy talking about Redemption. I enjoy playing it, but one of the cool things about it is we have a community that is not only tied around this game, but it's tied around a faith. And I love that intersection of faith and hobby, that really cool thing where you can go to a tournament and you can play some really competitive games against some players, and then you can pray with them after about how their life is going. And like, you never really have that with like other games I played before, like Magic the Gathering. Like, you can't expect to find a bunch of people ready to pray for you at a Magic the Gathering tournament. But I just love this ability, and I hope this is a good God-honoring opportunity to just get involved with this community that's so amazing, that's blessed me so much, and just share life with them, right? Share the good things, share the bad things, talk about strategy. I'm a person I love just chewing over strategy. I love talking with a lot of people in the community about, oh, what about this card? What about this? So that's what I like.
And I think that right there, that part of it is something I'm looking forward to you bringing to the podcast too, because even when I was releasing, weekly episodes and I was on top of it, we touched a wide variety of topics with different guests, but we didn't really lean too much into the depth of strategy with the game. And that was one area that we didn't touch as much. And I don't necessarily want to pivot and change, and I don't necessarily want that to be the main point of the podcast or anything like groundbreaking, but I do look forward to it being a more explored topic on the podcast, along with all of the other things that we've covered in the past. And hopefully we'll continue to be able to cover a wide variety of topics with a wide variety of guests once we get back to those. But I think everything about the podcast, all the changes in my mind are nothing but positive. And I know that we might face some resistance from some people that have listened to the podcast that kind of got used to things a certain way and really like that. But as with the game and rotation, it's kind of like pruning and making a change that might feel bad in the moment for a better long-term future. And I think that, not to compare the podcast directly to the game, but I think that it's kind of in the same mindset that we're making some of these changes. One of those changes I reached out and asked on Discord was about maybe moving to more segment-driven ideas. So like the podcast can have a segment doing this or that. And we've come up with some ideas that we think are going to be, great for you as listeners, also great for us to talk about, because there was a point to where it felt like we were, as a podcast, when me and Brad were struggling to really get into the know of the community and know what was happening, going on. We weren't really creating our own content. We were just talking about other people's content. And I think this is a way for us to diversify, create all kinds of different content. Like, there's some of these segments, there's no idea or no limit to the direction they can go. Like the community mailbag, you've read over the questions that we're going to go over. Like,
those are good questions.
Those are conversations that I could see us spending, honestly, an hour talking about if we did it openly, discussing all of the topics. And those are all topics that were provided by you, the community. So it's not us putting any thought into what are we going to talk about. It's you giving us the idea to talk about so that you can hear our thoughts, and maybe it can be used to create a bigger discussion point amongst everyone in the community, which is a cool idea. We've also got an idea to do a deck of the week where we pick out a deck and talk about not just the deck itself, but also the player behind the deck and, like their mindset, their play style and things like that. We've got the Agur the Creator segment, driven by the idea of you creating card ideas and sharing them with the community on a consistent basis. Like I see you constantly doing it still, and I'm like, man, save some of those, save some ideas. But that's the cool thing about card creation ideas is you never really run out. There's always inspiration to find something else, and some other card interaction you can think up and create. But we've got those. We've got the power rankings we're already doing. These are all good topics that we're going to talk about. That's going to diversify the content that we bring you through the podcast. And we'll still be able to do the guest interviews and things like that you all have come to love and have come to message me and ask me when we're going to get back to doing those. So I am excited about that. But we do have some big news to share. And I've been doing a lot of the talking here as we start the podcast because a lot of it revolves around decisions that, because I'm the one that created the podcast and I've been here the whole time. So a lot of these changes are things that I've worked on and pushed us towards. But Jake, I'd like to give you the floor here to make a pretty huge announcement for the podcast. On your first episode, not only is there a new co-host, but there's something else that's new. What is it, sir?
Dude, we have a new sponsorship for the podcast.
A new sponsorship.
Your Turn Games.
Your Turn Games, yes, is the new sponsor of the podcast. So that, again, will get met with all kinds of questions, I'm sure. Even though these are great things that you look forward to, and you look forward to all of the where the relationship between Your Turn Games and the podcast could go, and things that we could do for the community. It also comes with questions of what happened to Covenant Games, what happened with John, kind of like Brad. And I've made the joke a couple of times at Michigan State tournament, which me and Jeremy road tripped up there for that this past weekend. But I don't want it to seem like it, but it's hard for it not to look like, oh man, we finally got Brad off the podcast. Now we can do all these cool things. And it's going to be a similar thought of it could look like, man, we finally got rid of Covenant Games and now we can do cool things. But it's just all of these changes are wrapped up happening at the same time, kind of because as we made one major change, I tried to fit in a bunch of different changes to go ahead and just have a season of change and then get back to, get back on the grind and do what the podcast does. But we do have a new sponsorship with Andy and his wife, Kelsey, at Your Turn Games. They were thankful enough to consider sponsoring the podcast. I got them some information on some of the annual fees for the podcast and things like that, similar to what John has done the past couple of years. And they did their due diligence. They talked with each other, maybe prayed about it, whatever their process was. And then they got back with me that they wanted to move forward with doing that. But before I had reached out to them this time, I did reach out to John and I explained to him that the podcast is trying to, the podcast as an objective thing, or inanimate thing. I'm trying to do this through the podcast is to create the best look for the community. And I think it's become difficult to say, hey, if you're enjoying this episode of the podcast, support our sponsor at Covenant Games, when there's just not been a lot of time for him to put into Covenant Games. I don't want to say exactly what happened, what the cause is, but I think there's just been a lot of change in his life too since he took over Covenant Games. I think he's moved, new job, new kid, just a lot of different things that have pulled him away from being able to do some of the goals and things that he had with that business. And as such, I just felt like it was a time to kind of pivot for us so that we could be promoting. When someone listens to the podcast, I want to promote a sponsor that they can go to and there's engaging products for potentially a new listener that doesn't know much about the game. And I think Your Turn Games is the best in the business for that. And I think it's just a good fit for us. So there's nothing wrong. Like, we didn't have a falling out, me and John. We're still cool. Apart from the fact that he placed higher than me at Michigan State tournament, we're still cool. I didn't get to play him head up. I'm pretty sure if I had, I would have beat him, but I guess that's to be decided.
Wow, called out.
He did also jump me for second in booster just by soul differential. So,
man, sounds like he destroyed you. Like,
that's just what the record shows. But all things are good with that relationship. John was the first person to sponsor the podcast when I first came up with this idea and put it out. He's been the driving force for making sure that the podcast has resources to stay alive, even in the recording lulls that we've had the past couple of years. I think he's been really kind of a strong part of the foundation for the podcast. And I don't think it would be understated to say that I know that I knock him for having a couple of failed podcast attempts on his resume, but I feel like he can put down John Early as being kind of, let's just say, an honorary producer of this podcast. And this, I would assume, being around for 3 years or so, or going on 3 years, is a successful run for a podcast. So we can say that he has a successful podcast in his bag of tricks too. So
I like that.
Definitely want to thank you, John, for taking the early risk in helping sponsor a podcast for a guy that didn't know anything about podcasting and helping get us to this point. But I am absolutely looking forward to everything that we're going to be able to do with Your Turn games. And that's going to be hitting the ground running. And so Andy was fired up when I reached out to him. I'm fired up. I don't know about you, Jake, but you should be fired up too.
I'm fired up. Let's go.
So we're hitting the ground running. And when I say that, I mean like we've already got our first sale to celebrate. So you're going to be able to take 15% off of all singles at Your Turn games. So
that's awesome.
From the 22nd, which is when this episode should release, if we are not delayed, from the 22nd through the 31st, you will be able to get 15% off of all singles at Your Turn games using the code The Threshing Floor Sale. All together, no spaces. The Threshing Floor Sale. That's going to unlock that 15% off discount. But Andy did want me to go ahead and pass along something for you guys so that you weren't hit with any unexpected delays. He is attending a pastor's retreat. So any orders placed from the 19th through the 24th. So if you take advantage of this on the first few days, then your order will not be shipped until Saturday, 5/25, which is when he plans to catch up from the week that he spent away. So we've got a sale on singles. Now you say, fired up, hit the ground running. That's okay, but that's not lighting the world on fire, right? I don't know if that's fueling the hype train, but there is definitely more.
Yeah.
And so with that, we are going to announce our first giveaway as partners or being sponsored by Your Turn Games. So Your Turn Games already ready to give away some stuff for the community. And that should be no surprise because Andy's always, generous with the community. He helped us do our first podcast giveaway when he wasn't a sponsor and when we were sponsored by technically a rival third-party retailer for redemption. So I think that the fact that now we're together, I like to give away stuff. Andy seems to be generous with giving away stuff, so it might be a good thing for the community, although we might have to take it a little slow so we don't run him out of business when we first join up. But we are ready to give away some things, and part of what we're going to give away is we're going to give away not one, but two $25 Your Turn gift cards.
Let's go.
2 people will win $25 gift cards for our new sponsor, Your Turn Games. And then the big one is that there will be someone winning a booster box of their choice. Now, their choice...
Booster box?
Yes, booster box. The whole thing, all 24 packs. You get the ultra rare, you get it all. Everything down to the cellophane wrapper. But there is one caveat to it. It is contingent on what product Andy has in stock at the time that you win. So when we say your choice, it's your choice among what is available.
Mm-hmm.
But I think he has most things available. He did, I think, tell me what he didn't have available, but I'm going to be honest, I didn't write it down on my outline here. So you don't get that information right now. There is a little bit of a trade-off because we're trying to, I guess, work on the image of the podcast a little bit. So there is some contingencies with this giveaway. In order to green light this giveaway, we're going to be setting a goal. We want to see this episode by the time the following episode comes out in 2 weeks, that means you've got 2 weeks. All we got to do is get to 200 streams or downloads. Streams or downloads is what they call it when someone listens to the podcast. We average on a good episode release about 100 to 120 in a week. That first week, usually on a good episode, pops off. We get up between 100 to 120. We're just asking to get to 200. I think that's doable. I think it will help us. When someone searches hobby podcast, it'll help us come up in results the more our episodes are listened to. If we get to 200, we're going to give this stuff away. But how we're going to give it away, that's another layer to it. And this is stuff that I talked with Andy about, and we thought that this would kind of benefit both parties for our vested interest. And what we're going to do is we're going to set up to have it kind of like the first giveaway that we did, where you could review the podcast. We at one point did where you could review the podcast for an entry into a drawing. Mm-hmm. That's what we're going to do here. We're trying to rebrand the podcast a little bit with a lot of new features and new content. So it's going to really help us if we can get some new recent reviews on the podcast on the various platforms that we're available. And as far as I know, this thing is pretty much available on anywhere you can listen to podcasts. Yeah. If there is anywhere that it's not, and you listen to podcasts there and you can't find it, let me know and we'll try to get it there too. But I know we're on Apple Podcasts, we're on Spotify, we're on Amazon Podcast, we're on Pocket Cast, whatever that is. We're on Samsung Podcast. I didn't even know Samsung had podcast, but we're there. We're on, I think we're on like Radio FM or something like that.
Yes, something like that.
Like you name a podcast platform, we're probably there. And most of those, we have limited reviews. So we don't show up in any search results for even, what our content is, which is hobby podcast. In order to boost that, we'd like to get a few more reviews on some of these platforms. So the only limitation for how many entries you can get is how many reviews you can leave on different platforms. So if
that's awesome.
There's 10 platforms, you get 10 entries. I'll even, I'm not going to enter myself into it, but Jake, if you want to be entered into it, I mean,
I want to go for that booster box.
You just go and review your own podcast now. Just pretend you're, Brad's still on, and you review and be like, hey, I really dislike that guy, Brad. I'm going to have to take his job one day, and then it'll look like you're shenanigans happening. But
shenanigans.
I think that's a good way to do it. We've got a form filled out so you can send some type of confirmation, like a screenshot of your review, so that that also will help us track who has how many reviews, because otherwise it would just be us going and looking at all the different platforms and trying to look at the reviews. And that's a lot of work that I don't have time for. You leave us a review, you fill out the form, screenshot of your review, you get entered into the drawing. Unlimited entries, just only limited by how many platforms there are for you to leave a review. Each review gets you one entry, and then we'll be doing the drawing on the very next episode. So it's not going to be a long, drawn-out thing. When we get to 200, baby, we're reaching in the hat and pulling the name out next week.
That's awesome.
And we'll be giving away the 2 gift cards first. So we'll draw for a gift card, and then we'll draw for the booster box.
The big one.
I guess some people might not like to do it that order, because then whoever wins the gift card is out of the running for the other. But hey, that's what we're going to do. I'm going to go ahead and say it here. That's what we're going to do.
Sounds good.
Let's see if there's anything else I need to say. Oh, entries will be accepted through Saturday, June 1st. So Saturday, June 1st will be the last day to get your entries in. If you submit an entry after that, I cannot guarantee that it will be counted. Actually, just for the sake of accountability and things, if it's after June 1st, it will not be counted. So get it in by Saturday, June 1st. So how about that? You're on your first podcast, Jake, on your first episode. And
I want a box.
You can have all you got to do is make sure that we draw your name when we now if we legitimately draw your name, shenanigans are afoot.
Shenanigans.
I love the word shenanigans. I'm going to see how many times I can use it in this episode.
It's the word of the day.
Yeah, word of the day. That's another segment is word of the day.
Exactly.
But I guess with that, we'll move right along to what you have come to expect for the podcast. That's us to go over recent news and happenings. And I know previously, Brad and I mentioned that we might not go over community-created content as much because we didn't have as much time to take that in and digest it in order to talk about it intelligently. So I'll make you a deal. I'll just tell you about new content that's come out without any expectation for me to know about it. And then me and you can later on both go and watch it, read it, and gather details about it. So I do enjoy being able to spotlight other people that are creating content. So I do want to maintain that aspect of it on the podcast. So we've got some content from Redemption with Jaden since our last recording. There is 2 different gameplay videos. There is him pretty much destroying our boy Brad, sending him away with a defeat in the Lackey Grand Prix round 5 as he played the combo meal. So he's got a deck there. Jaden's been really combo-y in his videos lately. So if you're a combo player, Jaden's content in the last few weeks is where you want to be. All the way dating back to the Ashkelon, which is, some people thought was going to be the boogeyman. And I don't think it's quite there, but I do think that you see the mind working on some of these videos and coming up with these decks. And then his round 6 game is against Hi, I'm Null. And that game apparently ends in the most epic 4-4 tie. But I have not watched that one. That one I'm super excited to go and see. But it's titled Does Meal Win Games? And I don't know. Apparently it ties games.
Exactly.
So I don't know.
I know his game versus Brad, like that, he's got a really cool combo there. And maybe we can talk about it more some other time, but I really like that one. Yeah.
I'm open to on weeks or things that I have time to take these videos in. Absolutely, we can talk about them. These are also opportunities for us to pick our deck of the week for that segment and potentially talk about some of them. And see, that's where I think you're going to benefit the listeners in the long run here is already wanting to talk about the strategy and the thoughts behind it and things like that. And I think we need a little bit more of that on the podcast. So I'm glad that you're bringing that to the table. Now, Tyler Talks has not put out a recent video, so there's not anything for me to tell you that's super recent, but there is one video I wanted to highlight because I don't think we've talked about it on the podcast since he put it out, and that is his video titled Schools of Thought and How to Net Deck. And obviously net decking is where you take someone else's list and you basically play their deck. Obviously you can take that straight up and you can play it exactly how they built it. You can also tweak it. But this is a good video for him telling you about the way that certain players think and kind of isolating their thoughts and deck building, I guess, tales or, things that they're always going to do with their decks that you can kind of pinpoint and know to expect with their deck builds. And then how do you net deck? How do you take a deck and, play that? All of those are just good, helpful tips as we move forward towards nationals because there's benefit in net decking to the point to where even if you're not planning on playing this deck as a long-term thing, you pick it up and you play a couple of games, you learn how it plays so that when you play against it, you know how that deck operates and where the areas of weaknesses are, the areas of strength, and you kind of just are able to build a game plan to go up against it. And I think he gives a lot of great details in that video. That's one that I did watch. So I wanted to make sure we shouted it out because I think it's beneficial to a lot of different players that are newer to competitive, to the high-end competitive scene. And maybe to get that edge is just kind of you opening up your thought process and taking influence from some of these other players that are doing well at tournaments and things.
I think he highlights a lot of different flavors, that a lot of the different areas of the Redemption community, like they focus on like not every player is the same, but there's lots of different cool ways he talks about different players like to have their deck built in a different way, and
different little pockets of the country and play groups that play. You know, like some play group might be more balanced or D heavy, and then there might be an aggressive play group somewhere else that's kind of counter to that. And just being able to read and pick up on the decks that are being shared to isolate that, all fascinating stuff. And in the future, it'll be awesome to talk about some of those strategic differences and things on the podcast. But we've got one more here.
Can I get this one?
Yeah, you can take it away, man.
This is my co-chef, Baboony Tim. He's got a bunch of videos out recently. He's got his Saucy Tossy deck tech video and gameplay video. He's also got a concealed Ashkelon deck tech and gameplay video. So really cool, really interesting stuff. I love the way Baboony cooks, and I like getting in the kitchen with him because he's got some really great ideas.
He has to find out an idea is bad for himself before he'll agree with the school of thought. So yeah, I know that he's still recovering from getting hurt on the monkey bars, but it's nice to see he's still grabbing these different concepts and putting them into decks and trying them out. He has had the most like meteoric rise to the top of the competitive scene in Redemption since I've gotten into the game. It's probably the craziest rise that I've seen. Some people would liken him to like a young Josiah Beers, who came on the scene and was instantly good. I don't want to put any extra weight on his shoulders, but I mean, dude, at Nationals, like I would not be surprised to see him land in the top 3.
Yeah, he's always improving. He's got a great introspective look at his own play. Like, oh man, I made a mistake here. I could fix that. And that's a huge asset for anybody that's trying to improve at competitive gaming. Being able to just measure your own mistakes and not put the loss of all. That's because I drew bad. That's because they got lucky. No, like I could have changed something, and that matters. Yeah,
absolutely. That analytical after the game discussion of like what would happen if this happened versus, I think that's one of the things that sets like the Allsteads apart is after the game, whether they win or lose, they sit there and analyze the matchup, and then they might ask follow-up questions to you if you played them. Like, when I did this and you did that, why? And just try to figure out if they made optimal plays at certain times or not. Very, very interesting to see. And you get to kind of see that unfold on his videos because he does the deck tech and he talks about it. And then he does the gameplay, and the gameplay is sometimes brutally honest. He's like, oops, I messed that up. And I think maybe he sits in a basement somewhere with just like one light on in the back corner with his popcorn. And he's, like old school, like football coaches just watching game film.
It's the reel right over and over again.
Yeah, he just watches it and he rewinds. Let me see how I did that Herod toss. Rewind.
Man, let's see this here.
Yeah.
He gets his little marker out and starts drawing on the board. Look, you see, you move this card here, you got it here. There you go. That's what we need.
Yeah, gets on the grease board.
Exactly.
Man. Okay, so here's a chance for us to share one of these fancy things for you because there's another bit of content from the community, but this is by way of an elder article on the Land of Redemption. So we're going to go ahead and play one of our new little call outs for you, our little media clips that I spent way too much money on, so I'm going to get my use out of them. So here we go. We're going to go ahead and hit you with this one so that you can be fully prepared what's on the other side.
The following segment contains spoilers that may or may not have been approved by the Royal Order for the Secrecy of Expansion Sets. Proceed with caution.
So proceed with caution. If you do not want to be spoiled, now is your opportunity to turn the podcast off. Actually, don't turn it off because we need you to keep listening. Just fast forward about 10 minutes.
Yeah, 10 minutes.
Yeah, about 10 minutes. But there was a Land of Redemption article. There previously, I guess it's been so long since we recorded, Tyler's article came out and gave some information about Israel's Inheritance, which is the new set. And then we just got one from John Early, who is taking over the lead graphics role that was previously held by Gabe for a long time. And so he's going through some of the details on coming up with some of the art for the cards. There is a good number of cards that are going to use AI generated art. And he kind of goes through the back end kind of struggle of using AI art coming together with art that fits the biblical time period, but isn't too superhero-y. It doesn't have too much of the, Roman influence.
Aesthetic.
Yeah. And also not just that, but also being kind of appropriate to the source material.
Yeah.
I don't know necessarily that comic book muscle bound freaks was necessarily the mighty men that hung out with David and all that. Yeah. So I think what they landed on was a good balance of that.
It's awesome.
And I know that I personally have not liked the AI art that has been in the game so far. I do understand the role that AI art can have for our game, but John did a great job of laying it out and explaining some of the benefits for AI art, and I came away with a little bit more of an open perspective, and I really do enjoy the art that is on a couple of these, especially like I'm gonna butcher names. So Adino, yeah. His art I think looks fantastic. Now, definitely. As much as I love John, and I said we didn't have a falling out before, but maybe we're gonna have one now. Buddy, could we do anything besides just a spear for the spear artwork? Like, I get it. It is 100% accurate. It is a spear.
Awesome.
But it's literally just a spear diagonal in the frame.
I think it could be on top of some like armor or something like
yes, or put it on a nice, cute little holder on the wall. Like,
yeah, exactly.
Right beside a Eat, Pray, Love sign or something. But just something like it just for such a strong ability. Yeah. On a weapon, on a purple weapon, like we're excited about the weapon. I didn't get really excited about that art. The rest of the art I thought was amazing. I know that someone said that the one version of Ira looked evil, so they took that out.
He had those anime shiny blue eyes, like
yeah, he did, but like I was kind of digging it a little bit. So like I hope we can reuse that for an evil warrior at some point. That would be pretty cool.
That's really cool.
I did like some of the art, but more importantly than just the art, we actually have final card images.
Let's go.
So these are what these cards are going to be when we finally get them. And it was confirmed by Rob this week that we are on pace for a release at Nationals with a hopeful follow-up release to the public 2 to 3 weeks later if everything goes well. So
that's exciting, man.
It is exciting, and I am super excited about the fact that AI art for these different themes are going to be able to tie them together. Like,
that's the other cool thing.
Yes, like Sons of Jacob, they used classical art paintings or whatever to portray the Sons of Jacob, and they're not entirely period accurate.
No, yeah.
So they're
like Renaissance Italians, like, hey, I'm a son of Jacob. Hey,
yeah,
there's my brother Mario.
He's a Mario. Super Mario. I'm sorry, I'll get carried away with Mario things, but definitely, like, I would have enjoyed if we were using AI art this way when Sons of Jacob came out, and we just to give us more options. We might have still settled on using what they did. But I think just having the options for our small game that has a limited budget and we can't spend money on custom art to give us something that makes our game feel unique to itself. And I think that is very important.
Yeah. I think one of the things with the Sons of Jacob art is like, I cannot tell any of those cards apart from the art, really, because they're all just those guys in profile, like weird costume, guy with, sometimes they have like a scythe in their hand, but okay, who's this one again? Oh, that's Zebulon. That's That's Dan.
Now,
okay, I don't know.
My player created card, Eliezer, is kind of side profile too.
Yeah, but it's different style.
He looks awesome.
Yeah.
Like, my dude looks awesome. I don't care what anybody says. I think I had the best player created card.
That was good.
Because when I found that portrait, and that portrait was actually someone drew Eliezer of Damascus. Like, that was supposed to be him. I didn't
That's
grab
awesome.
an art that was supposed to be someone else. I Googled and found that classic painting that was supposed to be Eliezer. Who is drawing Eliezer of Damascus? Like, I didn't even know that dude existed until I read. Like,
Who's your favorite hero
like
from the Bible?
I've done the thing to where you start and it takes you a really long time reading small sections of the Bible, all to get through the entire thing.
Yeah.
So I've done that, and I've forgotten over half that information because you read it and it's kind of because you're taking on more information than you can consume.
Like a fire hydrant.
Yes. And I can tell you that I when I went back and I was like reading chapters 12 through 24 for a reference for a character that Cloud of Witness Abraham could search out and potentially ban to, I was looking at all the names and I came across him and I was like, who is this dude? Who even knows this guy? Like, and he was going to inherit everything that Abraham had.
Yeah.
I mean,
Crazy.
it is crazy. But I definitely enjoy the art. I don't want to get sidetracked talking about blue because then people just say that I'm that guy that always draws it back to what I like to play. But Dino the Esnite, again, I'm going to mispronounce a lot of this stuff, but his ability is, while equipped, restrict evil dominance. Okay, I'm going to equip this guy every time, and you're not playing an evil dominant on me. No battle extension. No, you're not bringing Philistines to this fight, dog.
Martyr,
you know what I mean?
fall in the way.
Yeah, like I'm not letting you do that. And then he can ban to Shama.
Shama.
Okay. Give it a little bit more emphasis there. Or you can take an OT purple warrior from reserve.
I don't know if you remember these guys, but I remember Odino as a kid. Like, that was one of my favorite cards. Now he's like, he's got a glow up here, and this guy is like brutal now. Like, that's awesome. I remember his spear. I remember Odino, and now they're like, this looks awesome.
Yes. You end up taking an OT purple warrior from reserve. That's not super great, but he doesn't need, he gets to restrict dominance and then ban to somebody.
Yeah.
Like, okay, like that's a dude right there. Not to mention, he can be banded to by Jehoshaphat. So Jehoshaphat and what you have from LOC can band to him. So you can end your band with him going to Shama, and I don't know what he's going to do. He's
going to do things.
But that right there, I love that card already. I think that it gives me hope that this theme might be more playable than some of the themes from IR. And that's not a knock on IR. IR had a very limited play style, or it has a very limited play style. Like, if you enjoy playing the way that IR plays, then you love the set. You love that war of attrition in battle and things, and being able to always have, some answer. Like, that's great. But if you want to play something that not that style, again, I'm trying to say it without knocking that style of play with the extra add to battles and the manipulation of resources and things. Like, these guys look pretty awesome to play. So definitely. You've got a Dino, and you can take it away with a Dino Spear.
Yeah, a Dino Spear, and this is really cool. They have a theme of signature weapons here. And we have a Dino Spear. So the signature weapons, you can actually do something with anybody. They can go on anybody. Like, hey, Shema, he can grab a Dino Spear. That's fine. But if a Dino has it, it's better, right? So a Dino Spear says select up to one, or if used by a Dino 2, draw one, discard an evil character from a deck. So he gets a little bit of card refunding there. I guess you call it card advantage because he gets to keep the weapon. It doesn't go away. And he gets to strip an evil character from a deck. And that could be huge. Like, if they have like Deceiver in their hand, stripping out their Saul of Tarsus before they get to use it, like, you kind of just really kind of wrecked their game. And you get to get some scouting on what their deck's going to do, especially if you do this like turn one. Strip that evil character out, maybe their best one, and like, let's fight now.
I think also being able to, if they don't have their Deceiver already, being able to potentially snipe that out of the deck. Because a lot of times people build decks where that Deceiver is the only link to an evil character in their reserve.
Exactly.
That they really need later on in the game. I don't know what the reason for the wording on this one. I did find the wording a little weird because it's select up to one versus like select one or two if used by a Dino. And I guess maybe they didn't want the draw one to be forced, but you could always target a deck and just fail the search, or I guess if you're not able to target the deck, maybe you would be forced to do the draw one.
Yeah, if you had to do one and it didn't, like, they'd have to put May on both of them otherwise. And if you had to target your own deck, you could fail the search, but that means you get a search trigger if they have anything that punishes a search. So if they have a Jonah in their territory, he's going to say, well, you searched, even if you failed, like, you searched a deck.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna take away something from your territory. So I think they just wanted to make it easier on that.
Yeah, that's fair. This guy over here, this is an initiative monster, 1/7. Yeah. I'm going to attempt the name and you tell me where I'm wrong, okay?
Yeah.
Naharai?
Naharai. I think it's Naharai. Yeah, that sounds right. Beerathite?
Josiah the Beerathite.
Exactly.
It's got beer in the name. I'm just...
Yeah.
This is...
What are they doing?
Yeah, what are they doing? The game was created by a Catholic. Why is there not wine in the name? But this guy has an identifier line, and his identifier is X equals the number of your OT purple weapon. So getting a payoff for the more weapons you have in play. He can draw X, limit 2, which I think this is...
That doesn't happen in Redemption very often.
Yeah, draw 2. But I do like that they're toning down potentially the limit 3. Yeah. There was like limit 3 or limit 3 unless played in battle. Now they're taking that down even further down to 2. So this is a X identifier, but it's limit 2. So you draw 2 or you negate an evil card. And then you can bounce a weapon in a territory and equip an OT purple enhancement.
I like that a lot.
So obviously you can use this to get a weapon off of one guy to put it on a different guy. You can also potentially bounce it off of one guy to put it back down on the same guy.
Yeah.
So you can
ban to them later or do something. Yeah.
Yeah. Like I don't know what the overall like benefit of potentially doing it on the same guy is, but they worded the ability in a way to where it doesn't exclude the guy. It doesn't say you may bounce a weapon, or it doesn't say you may, I guess, move or transfer a weapon. It's like bounce and then play.
Yeah, bounce, yeah.
And it feels like maybe there could be a loop effect for some kind of weapon that maybe you want to get it and put it down because maybe something happens when it gets activated, or I don't know. Maybe there's a territory guy that has some kind of weird interaction.
I think because it's in territory, it's not very like, it escapes any combos, but it's still just really cool. And like, I love the thematics of it. It's like, dude, toss me, Adino, give me your spear. Let's go. Like, Adino's like, oh yeah, the brother, you take it. Like, he's just throwing it into battle.
That is a cool concept to think about.
Yeah, like
they're running on the front lines. They're like, I need a weapon. Give me your spear, soldier. I need it now.
It sounds so awesome. Like, this is the Mighty Men are doing. Like, okay, you just killed the Goliath. I'm going to kill this other like wild boar here. Like, come on, throw me a spear. Like,
yeah.
Let's do this.
So I think there potentially could be some combo-y type thing. I don't think anything crazy good or anything, but if there's like a territory class guy that gets some kind of trigger if a weapon is equipped, that's what I was thinking. Maybe there's something like that.
It could be.
But either way, cool idea, because we have not seen much ability to take a weapon off of a character and move it to a different one. Not to mention, this also gets away from some of the counters to bounce, is protect characters from bounce.
Yeah.
And weapons are not protected from bounce, so you could potentially keep doing it that way. That brings us to the last spoiler that was given to us from the article. So you want to take that one?
Yeah, so we got a 7/7 here, and this one is Ira, the Techoite. And I believe this is Hiatus's current avatar art, too.
Yep.
This thing is cool. This guy looks amazing. He's got an amazing sword.
Like, with the sword being slightly longer than what you would think a sword would look like for his body height. It reminds me of maybe like Lord of the Rings, and maybe this is he doesn't look like a dwarf, but the sword length makes it look. But that background art and all of that just screams Lord of the Rings to me. I cannot shake that.
Yeah, I could definitely see those influences in there. But at the same time, it doesn't feel like it's out of place here. Like I think it fits really well. Anyways, he says, if equipped, you may paralyze an evil human this turn, and you may take an Old Testament purple warrior from deck or a good Old Testament enhancement from reserve. So this guy's really interesting. Got a lot of potential here. Without him banding himself, I had to see what else he can do. But the paralyze is really interesting. And especially for draft, this type of thing is going to be really cool because in draft, sometimes if you paralyze the character that you know they have enhancements for, they're like, oh, I don't have any enhancements for the other guys. So
yeah,
I'm in trouble.
Yeah, you can put them into a spot to where like they just can't play their cards, which is kind of the way that a lot of redemption battling is happening right now. I do have some follow-up thoughts here, but here's one thought that I have about these guys, and in particular the Ira art. You mentioned that it doesn't look out of place. It does not. I really like the art, and that leads me to a thought with this AI art. I wonder, because I really like the Book of the Covenant art when I first came to the game. Mm-hmm. The new set was Prophecies of Christ. It was a reprint, and it looked really good. That artwork does look really good. I think it would be awesome to have card sleeves with Book of the Covenant on it. Unfortunately, that is a Cactus Game Design owned image that was originally done by Doug Gray. It's not one that you or I, as part of the community, could easily get access to because we would have to have direct permission from Rob Anderson and things like that. With AI art is not owned by anyone. Yeah. So I wonder if there's the potential to maybe have a little bit more flexibility with the community getting these art pieces to potentially make cool things. Like, I think Ira on card sleeves could potentially be awesome looking.
That'd be really cool.
I think he could, if you're playing, these purple warriors, when they come out, you're excited about them. I think Ira could be on the back of your card sleeve and just look epic. I think some of the other art that we've seen could look good. Maybe some kind of way of blending these different warriors onto one playmat image, things like that. And I just wonder if that maybe leads to a little bit more flexibility with us being able to use some of this artwork. I have not talked to anyone on the Elder team about that. It's just a passing thought that I had. I'm also aware enough of the current situation, being that now we have watermarks on these, and we just had a recent, counterfeit scandal within the redemption community. We made it. We're famous. But I would rather err on the side of caution. I wouldn't want anybody to do anything that makes them feel uncomfortable to where someone could manipulate and use it for negative effect or whatever. But it would be cool to have some of these new art pieces be able to be freely shared. Kind of like there's some of the art from the Cahaba comics, I believe. The Archangels and stuff that we just can't get that artwork in our hands as part of the community because they're being used under a license agreement that Rob had with the developers when those came out and were popular at the time. And obviously, like Cahaba Comics, I don't know who would own the rights to those now, but he obviously has an extending ability to use the art, and that's why it's been used. I just wonder what the dynamic is with the art and it being AI generated and, no one technically owning the rights to AI art. So I don't know. I figured I would just mention that on the podcast because that's one of the first things that comes to my mind when I see some of this really cool artwork. And obviously we as a community like to make custom products and things using artwork that's in the game. So it's just kind of a natural next step in thought to consider that. So.
And I'm really stoked for this set's art. I think they said they have each elder looking at a specific theme, and each elder picked the art for the theme. So we got the Mighty Men here with AI art, but there's me lots of classical art too and stuff. So I'm really excited for that.
Yeah, and that will kind of give without the same person doing multiple themes, bringing in certain art taste or whatever that they have to almost make themes look similar. Just more ways to branch it out and keep them more sub-identified versus identified as just a whole. JJ Tissot being used so much in GOC was great, but all the themes
exactly kind of blended between them.
Everything just blends together, and that's not a knock. It was awesome that we had all that artwork that we could use to bring some of those images to life. But the angels, look really good because a lot of them tie together because they came from the same source material from the Archangels comics. So those look really good together. But then like Empty Tomb kind of looks the same as Nativity, and Nativity looks the same as the Samaritans, and
the Good Gold.
The Thieves look the same as, like the same vein of like Herod's, that type of thing.
Exactly.
Anyway, I digress. That's just some thoughts that I had about the art there. So I guess that'll move us right along to talking about some recent tournaments that have happened. The only official tournament that I have results for is, unfortunately, the one that I went to. I don't know recently. I know that there is the not Northwest State tournament, but the Oregon State tournament coming up in the Pacific Northwest that Chad's hosting. That got pushed a week. I know, with him recovering from his back surgery. So obviously our well wishes and prayers are with you, Chad, recovering from that. But we know we have that one coming up on the calendar. I know we've got the next time we record, we'll have the results for the Southeast Regional Tournament. But we had the Michigan State Tournament, and we obviously went up to Michigan, and that's where Nationals is going to be. Now, we didn't go to the venue where Nationals is going to be, but it gave us a chance to kind of get a feel for what the car ride's going to be like up there and things, and talk to Jay a little bit about some of the details for Nationals and things. We didn't pull out a lot of secret information, unfortunately, because I didn't try prying too much into that. I was just there trying to, laid back, hang out, see Jay. I hadn't seen Jay in I saw him at Nationals, I guess, but we didn't see each other at Classic Weekend, and I wasn't able to make it up for the Thomas J. Chambers tournament in the fall. So it's been a little while since I saw him, but it was nice to catch up. But in talking a little bit about Nationals and things that it's up there, all of that just made me think about Nationals and the fact that August 1st is literally, at the time of recording, we're recording this Monday night, 73 days away.
Let's
73.
Go.
Yes, it fires you up. 73, but the people that don't have their travel plans solidified and things, it can become stressful as we get close and the days start winding down. So this is my plea to you all to start making plans, even if they're just paper thin plans, and they could fall through. Have some kind of idea so that it doesn't back up on you and the stress calls you not to potentially go, because it's just easier to not go than to have the stress last minute planning. Traveling multi-states away can usually offer a extra level of stress and things. So just go ahead and plan in advance. I do feel relief that the group that I'm staying with, we've kind of got housing plans already pretty much solidified and squared away. So that's one less thing to worry about. I just got to get there. Then, it's just the expenses that you have while you're there. It's not like a stressful of planning. So
if you get a tour bus, you can just take it to every Nationals. That would be really cool.
Just go ahead and invest in the tour bus.
Exactly.
If I bought a tour bus, it would be like the equivalent of me telling my wife that I bought a tour bus would be like that scene in Ricky Bobby where he's like, they come in to talk to him and they saw him playing wheelchair basketball, so they know he's not paralyzed. The doctor told them. They walk in. He's like, yeah, I just bought a handicap accessible van. It's out there, $100,000 or whatever. You all paid up on that? I'm all paid up. Yep. Paid it in cash.
That's awesome.
And then they're like, you are not paralyzed. Of course, then he goes on to, I hope you have beautiful, athletic, articulate sons. And I pray they have their legs taken away. I pray you know that pain. Don't you put that evil on us, Ricky Bobby. You are not paralyzed. And of course, then he stabs himself in the knee, or above the knee. Then they get the other knife to cut around that knife. I'm pretty sure knives would be involved if I told my wife that I bought a tour bus just to go to Nationals each year. And I would definitely be paralyzed, and I would have all that evil put on me. So
I'm just imagine how cool it could be. We could have like Roy's picture on the side. It'd be awesome, man.
I'm pretty sure Roy would sue us. We could have the power rankings. It would be kind of like when John Madden did Monday Night Football. We'll have the power rankings on the side with portraits, number 1, 2, all the way through 10.
That's awesome.
It'd be great, but I would be paralyzed and I would have 2 knives in my leg.
Yeah. We're starting to GoFundMe, right? It's going to be part of the contest.
Yeah. Yeah. You're going to get me killed. But anyway, Michigan State happened. It was great. We had a couple of other visitors show up from not so far away or so far away.
How long was the trip for you?
So I drove to Jeremy's house, which is about 2.5 hours away. And then from his house, we drove, and it was, I think, just over 10 hours.
Whoa.
So
12 and a half hours.
In total,
traveling.
12 and a half there, 12 and a half back.
Nice.
Jeremy was great. Jeremy's a road warrior.
That's awesome.
He was pumping the caffeine, and he was driving, and I was falling asleep on him toward the end, both ways. At the point to where he might get too tired and be like, "Hey, I need you, bro." That was the point where I was falling asleep on him. So I'm glad that I woke up in one piece, and I just want to give Jeremy a shout out for being able to handle it both ways.
Hey, those are fond memories. Going to tournaments with friends. I remember on the way back from a tournament, I had like the window down, so the cold air was on my face. I'm yelling just at the top of my lungs while I've got to stay awake. So those are the times that you remember. Those bond you.
The first big road trip that we took was to your state, to nationals when it was in Kenyon Lake, and it was like 13 hours from here.
Wow,
I believe. I don't want to lie to you, but I want to say it was about 13 hours.
Sounds right.
And I want you to know that me and Jeremy, and this was before I had old man bladder issues and got a few gray hairs and just can't do it anymore. But we made one stop on the way.
Whoa.
And it was because we had to get gas, and we just went ahead and used that as our bathroom break. Mm-hmm. And then we did the whole other half. So it was one tank on the way there and one tank on the way back to fill up. So we didn't have to stop but once on the way there. I drove the whole way. There was a random 18-wheeler drifted over, and I swerved to miss him, and then we got into this little, my car kind of was struggling to catch itself again. Yeah. So thank God we didn't die. But apart from that, it was a nice, easygoing travel. And this was much like that, just with a couple extra bathroom breaks.
Nice.
As I get older. We also traveled with Keegan, so... But
that's really cool.
I can't blame him for the extra bathroom breaks. It wasn't necessarily his fault. But it was a great time. The travel kind of let us see what it was going to look like getting up there for nationals. And then Jay is always kind of he's a mixed bag as a host. Like he's a good host and he's friendly and stuff. But then when he sits across from you, he can be kind of I just hate losing to that dude. And I lost to him. With a chance to get first in the local the night before the state tournament. Man. And then I lost to him with a chance for first for the state tournament portion of it. And because we had such a small group, we didn't play that many rounds. So when I lost to him, it knocked me out of placing at all.
Oh.
So whatever, it was a good time. But the results on the official scorecard are booster draft. Zach Gilball came in first. He came over from Iowa. And then John Early came from Minnesota. He got second, and I got third. Again, me and John technically tied without playing, and by soul differential, he had one extra soul rescued to mine, so he got second, and I got third.
Man, I love two of these players are in these top three, man, and there's you, of course, too. But yeah. Zach is awesome. John's awesome. I love this.
Yeah. In sealed, there was Jeremy Chambers, nice. Bob Feast, and then Keegan got third.
Let's go, Keegan. Come on.
And type 1 was Jay Chambers.
Yeah.
As much as it hurts to say. He did ask me how this was going to affect his power rankings, and I had to tell him I had to recover from the defeat first.
Makes sense.
But John Early came in second, and then Caden LaFountain in third.
Nice.
In type 2, Jeremy Chambers beat Jay, so we got to have that little recovery.
That's awesome.
And then Caden came in third.
Is Caden on the Discord? Is that?
He used to be.
Okay.
And I think he is trying to join again.
Okay.
I don't.
I just seen him. He's doing 2 constructed tournaments, doing top 3. This guy looks like he's got some skill.
He absolutely knows his deck inside and out and can play it very quickly to where you just trying to keep up with what he's doing takes a little bit of a mental sweat. That's always kind of a recipe for success. Like when Jeremy won teams for us, let's just go ahead and say it. He won teams for us. And he almost won Type 1 in Iowa playing Circus. I don't know if you recall Circus. It was using numerous as the stars. And
yeah, okay, yeah.
People talked about it for a while because there was a lot of numerous as the stars abuse after that.
Yeah.
Because he kind of laid the blueprint for it. But he played that deck so fast, it was like watching a well-oiled machine just go off. Not even stopping to think, just doing it. And that's literally what Caden was doing when he played.
That's awesome.
And we found that out when he teamed up with Jay and played us in teams. And me and Jeremy got beat by them. So we went up there to test out a new strategy for teams, and we lost. But that's what tournament season is about. It's not necessarily about trying to win before nationals. It's about getting tuned up for nationals.
You didn't even really want to win. You just wanted to.
No, we didn't want to win. We still got Tennessee State to try to get our state points.
Definitely.
But third was Jeff Lemon, and Bob Feast.
Awesome.
Who also drove from, they were only about an hour or so away, I think they said. But there was a lot of good travel for this tournament for players. Like Zach coming in, he's a quality player.
He's good.
John Early, quality player.
Yeah. Jeremy
was there. He was a quality player. I mean, I was there, but I'm just me.
It's just me.
And then Jay and Caden really represented their play group well.
That's awesome.
So we had a great time.
How was the no intro prep?
No intro prep I think that is a marvelous thing.
That's awesome.
I don't think that there's a reason to ever go back on it.
You don't think it's too big of an advantage for the person going first?
I don't. Okay. Because here's the thing, and this is kind of, I didn't want to get sidetracked here talking about this.
Oh, sorry.
But no, it's fine. This is you asking engaging questions here. That's a good sign for a co-host. But I think there's something to be said for us as players of teams, because what had happened was Caden took his straight up Type 1 deck, and then Jay changed out Souls and Dominance to play a defensive heavy deck. It was defensive heavy to offset the fact that Caden's deck was super aggro with Disciples and Star Bethlehem and all the speed. Like he was playing Ricky Bobby the cards. And he was doing shake and bake on us left and right and sideways twice on Sunday. That's awesome. But there's something to be said for us as teams players when we think about it. Like you go into building teams decks and you start thinking about all the things you need and you need to have answers for. Like Mark Valake and his wife Jalissa won last year. If you talk to Mark right now, he's shooting for another title. We're hoping to, meet up with them and get our revenge a little bit, so to speak. But expecting just good quality games because they're approaching teams as a format throughout the season, trying to figure out, what's the play, what's the best strategy. And a lot of times teams is just people getting together and throwing decks together last minute to play the category. There's not a ton of thought into it. Yeah. And I feel like there's more thought going into it today, but we're doing so almost to a detriment to where we think we need to have all these extra forts and things, and we need to punish our opponent for searching and drawing. And we're thinking so broad that sometimes just playing a quick and efficient Type 1 deck, streamlined, is just good enough. And that's what Caden did. He played his legit Type 1 deck, and the changes were made with Jay's deck to allow Caden to have his Type 1 deck. And he set up super fast. He didn't even get a soul on the first turn because we blocked with the Falling Star or the Fallen Star and kicked all his guys out, and he didn't have a good rescue to present otherwise in territory, and he had hand protection down with Beth Stable, so he couldn't present from there. So he didn't even get a rescue, but it was the fact that he got so much card advantage and so much resources set up because he was just playing that streamlined Type 1 deck. And that's another thing, like people approach teams and they start thinking, okay, which player is going to have this dominant, which player is going to have this one and stuff. And maybe a good strategy is just to let one of them play a straight up type 1 deck and the other person just to play stuff that supports that while still letting them block and rescue well in a team's environment. So, I mean, maybe cat's out of the bag a little bit sharing that, but I mean, playing type 1 deck in teams was pretty gnarly for Jay and Caden. So just something to think about, Mark, out there. The Zoom Discord Invitational. I'll just let you talk about this if you want, since you got some experience with it.
Invitational was cool. Rob throws great tournaments, and it was a lot of fun. But the champions, this Agur, that guy's lame. But we got him in second place, and Baboony in third, Flooded in fourth, and I'm Noel in fifth. So that was a really cool Series 18 for the Zoom Discord Invitational. A lot of fun, definitely, to be part of that.
Okay. Now, tell the people out there, how many games did you win?
So this was a 5-round invitational, so I went 5-0 on this one.
Okay, 5-0. Okay.
25 souls, 5-0. Well, no, they weren't all 5-0. I was just saying 5 games.
Yeah.
All full wins.
So, Lackey Grand Prix.
Mm-hmm.
Lackey Grand Prix 15. You're the number 1 seed in the top cut.
Yeah.
We played 6 rounds there. I was involved. What was your record there?
6-0, 6 full wins.
Okay. So you've got 11-0 with 11 full wins and in both tournaments, and a whopping plus 36 soul differential.
That's fun. But I like my deck, and I also ran hot, so I think it combined together.
Yeah, but
I'm ready to lose round one.
No, stop! Don't talk like that.
Yeah.
The point is though, now it's gonna look bad on me because when I do the power rankings, you're already fourth. Where do you go here? You continued your hot streak, and people are gonna think you just moved up because you're on the podcast now.
Yeah.
But
you can just take me off. I don't need to go.
No. We're not going to do that. It's good look for the podcast for one of us to actually do well in something. And since I couldn't do well, I had to reach out and get somebody that could. But I do want to acknowledge the fact that the win streak you're on right now is pretty gnarly. And if you were able to pull it off with winning both the Zoom, which is one of the bigger Zoom Discords that we've had, and then the biggest Lackey Grand Prix that we've had. Mm-hmm. I mean, it'd be hard.
The prize is a box there too. I want that box.
Yeah.
I need to get these prizes.
I know you could be getting 2 boxes if you review the podcast a lot and you win this. Yeah. But the matchups for the Lackey Grand Prix top cut to highlight, obviously you're the 1 seed and you're going up against I Am Bread, Jeremy Chambers, who is the 8th seed. And he only made it in by the soul differential because him and Josh Potratz had a similar score. There might have been someone else with the same score, but by soul differential, Jeremy got the 8th spot. Yeah. And then Red Wing is matching up with Joe Mama. And Joe Mama, we've talked about him a lot, how well he's been doing this tournament season in these.
Both their decks are scary, yeah.
But Jacob Red Wing has actually been on a nice little tear too. And, there's a good chance you might see his name pop up on the power rankings, but he's been doing good. So that's going to be an interesting matchup. Then you have the Guardian, Justin Alstead versus Jared Strauss, him.
Texas representing. Let's go.
I beat him in this tournament, and I'm not saying that that's a knock, but I did not think after he was down low enough to match up with me and then I beat him that he would be able to ascend back up. But he's done just that. He also did really well in the Zoom Discord. He was 2nd there. So you might be seeing a little Jared Strauss on the power ranking. So
that guy's awesome.
He's doing well. Mr. Hiatus versus Flooded Red. And
this is awesome.
We're going to have to figure out Jay's name. Sometimes it shows up Rooted Red and sometimes it shows up Flooded Red. Jay, reach out to me, brother. Just tell me, what is your name, man? Is he going to be Flooded Red or is he going to be Rooted Red? Because I feel like I need to make sure it's accurate.
Yeah.
But that's going to be a good matchup.
All these matchups look insane.
I mean, it's almost inverted if we look at the first matchup, if we said that you were playing Jeremy for our end top cut, a lot of people would assume that Jeremy would be the higher seed. Just the way that this tournament went, it's you with the higher seed, but still, Jeremy is a great player and could, beat anybody on any given day.
I don't think I've ever beat him. So
well, now's your chance. Yeah. Red Wing and Joe Mama. I wouldn't be surprised to see either one of those win in advance and then potentially win again. Obviously, you know the reputation of Justin Alstead. You've got the creative mind. Everybody likes the way that Jared kind of crafts these weird decks and puts things together and comes up with thought processes that are a little bit outside the box. And then you just got the guy that just won everything he played basically at Michigan State and Jay, and Mr. Hiatus, Tyler, the guy that's creating cards that other people play better than him sometimes. But he has been doing really well this tournament season. So
yeah, he's on fire.
Maybe he's regaining some of that old fire, catching up again.
He got some of Michael's secret sauce, from Space Jam. Yeah, that's good stuff.
So I think this right here is going to let us go ahead and debut another one of our fancy sound clips. And we're going to start off with the power rankings for this week.
And now, it's time to find out where the hottest players in the game stack up in this week's Power Rankings. This is the top 10 Redemption players right now, according to us.
All right, guys, that's it. It fires you up, right? You're ready to find out who is going to be at that top spot.
Man.
The foreshadowing, but I will say that even though that fires you up and gets you excited to hear it, keep in mind the last little phrase, according to us. We've got a built-in disclaimer here, so if you don't like the power rankings, take it up with me. Jake's new to the podcast. Don't be mad at him. I picked these rankings out, so we'll just get right into it. In addition to the cool little intro to it, we've even got the number call out, so we'll add those here, and then we'll just start going through our list. So let's see where we end up. But
let's go.
Here we go.
10.
Number 10 is Joe Mama, man. This guy's awesome. He's strong. We played in the last round, and his record was so strong it did not matter. If he won or lost, he was in no matter what. So I had a fun game against him. So he's earned his spot in the top cut, in the LGDP top cut despite losing that round. So he's definitely in. And I think he could be a little bit higher, but Joe Mama's there for sure.
9.
And in number 9, we've got a brand new face on the power ranking, someone that has a great mind for strategy and creative deck design. And everyone seems to love him within the community, but he kind of had a slower start to the tournament season. He hasn't participated in any in-person tournaments that I'm aware of, but...
Hey, he's winning that live. He just got engaged, right?
Okay. See, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
That's cool. That's awesome. Congratulations there. But not only that, you get to celebrate also that you're number 9 on the podcast, and that's Mr. Jared Strauss.
Texas represent.
Also known as him, which I always try to stress the N because it sounds like I'm saying H-I-M, but it's H-Y-M-N. Now, this cat finished second in the Zoom Series 18, and he's also fought and earned his way into the top cut of the Lackey Grand Prix.
8.
At number 8, we got Chad France, See the Tree. He got his Type 1 at Northwest Regionals. This guy is awesome. He's a huge blessing to the community. I love seeing this guy on the top 8, top 10.
7.
At number 7, we've got the Guardian of the Fortress. We've got Justin Alstead. Now, he did win the Classic event the Type 1 event at Mr. Classic on that Saturday, which kind of kicked off the tournament season. It was kind of the first big event for the tournament season. He then won the Zoom Discord Invitational Series 17, and he's earned the number 2 seed in the Lackey Grand Prix top cut here. So
awesome.
Doing really well here. Guardian of the Fortress, he's got to make it up because Jaden's been kind of slipping. He's been making these combo videos and things, and he hasn't been on the competitive edge, but the Fortress is still well represented by the fact that Justin Alstead has gotten that competitive edge again this season, and he's doing really well. So glad to see him here.
6.
At number 6, we have Tyler Mr. Hiatus. Not only is he an elder, one of the people that designs the cards, he's slinging the cards with everybody else here. This guy's doing great. He's doing well in the LGP. This guy is really fun. Always love to see his videos and love to see him on this list.
Absolutely.
5.
Number 5, we've got, and I know this is going to disappoint my man, Booster Jones. We've got Booster Jones right here. Brian Jones, the reigning Mr. Classic. He also won Booster in Type 1 at Kentucky State. And I know that he's won at least 2 other additional district tournaments with his play group, but he is not participating in the Lackey Grand Prix or the Zoom. And Kentucky State tournament was one of the first tournaments of the season, so we're just putting a little bit of distance between him and his last activity for us, and to value other players and see some better movement for people to crack into this thing and kind of move up the list. We can't be stagnant and just leave people there. So, Brian, if you want to move back up, it's real simple, bud. All you got to do is play some more games where we can get some data on you. So I definitely want to say that we still respect the fact that you are Mr. Classic, but we've got you right here slotted into the 5th spot.
4.
At number 4, we have Jeremy Chambers. I am bred. This guy won Alabama State Type 1 and Type 2, won Michigan State Type 2, and made LGP Top Cut. This guy is on fire. He's definitely a tough matchup to look out for me. I'm going to play this guy soon. So, man, this guy is on fire.
He's one heck of a road trip partner, too. So just throw that out there. Had fun traveling to the Michigan State tournament with him, even though we came up second in teams. Which was our big reason for going, is to test out a new team strategy, but well-deserved for him to be right here in this spot on the list.
3.
Number 3, we're going to welcome you into the jungle. This is for Mr. Babooni Tim. And he's been on a solid win streak, doing well in these in-person tournaments. He went to the Northwest Regionals, did well, and then he went to Arkansas State. They had a local the night before. He killed that. He won every category he played at Arkansas State. We've had a little bit of a few weeks since then. And in that time, he's entered but not done that well in the Lackey Grand Prix, but he did do pretty well. I think he finished 3rd in the Zoom Series 18. So he's done well there. And he's also still, kind of on the forefront of content creation, creating videos and coming up with kind of these outlier deck strategies and things that are really interesting for the community to look and test out and things, but still maintaining a good competitive edge to him while still generating that content, which I know for a fact is not easy to do. So
It's not easy to do.
We are happy to say that right here in the 3rd spot is Mr. Babooni Tim.
2.
At number 2, we have Mr. J. Chambers, Flooded Red, Rooted Red. What is your name right now, Jay?
Yeah, what is your name? Why does it keep showing up different at different times?
But anyway, he's won local and Michigan State Type 1 teams, 4th place in Zoom, made it in the top cut of LGP 15. This guy has been always good, and he's always a threat. Jay Chambers at number 2.
Absolutely. And I think Jay will be super happy to know that he's finally placed above Jeremy. So he pushed himself there by doing well recently. And that's going to bring us to, you know what it is.
1.
Number 1. We haven't said your name yet, but Mr. Agur the Wise. And some people might think you're just here because you're on the podcast now. And it does benefit us to have a player represented from the podcast that's doing well in the community and the competitive scene. That's got nothing to do with it. My dude, you won a few categories at Texas State. I know you guys had a smaller turnout than expected, but all you can do is win the games in front of you.
Yeah.
And then between the Zoom and the Lackey, you win 11-0 with a plus 36 hole differential.
Oh.
I mean,
I was like, I wanted to get I want to finish the LGP before I got to number 1. I was like, because if I just lose immediately, it's gonna look horrible. But the deck's been running hot. I've had some good games. I've been playing well, so we'll see how it goes. But thank you very much.
I do know that you've told me a couple of times that you're primed for a loss. So if you lose, I'm going to say that you manifested it on yourself. Your negative mindset would have just attached.
Just trying to stay humble. Stay humble.
Well, hopefully you do well. I know that's going to be a tough matchup with you and
Definitely.
Mr. I Am Bread, but hey, look at the bright side. Even if you fall down from number 1, you can't fall all the way out of the power rankings in one week or one 2-week period. So
maybe I can try. I'll get a bunch of process going.
Well, we'll see. That's going to do it for this revamped presentation of the power rankings. We'll get the graphic updated. I'm going to have to be reaching out to you, Mr. Jared Strauss, because I'm going to need one of those nice little pictures to put up there by your name. We'll get the graphic updated over with our friends at Land of Redemption. And now the podcast will move right along. That kind of roadmap we talked about at the beginning of the episode. We'll just move into some of these new segments, and we'll get you to the first ever Agur the Creator.
And now, join us as we head into the design lab and brainstorm new card ideas with this week's Agur the Creator.
All right, so brand new segment, Agur the Creator, along with all the other brand new things. This seems a bit of a smaller change to the podcast, but it is one that I think will be kind of cool to create some cool conversation. So, Mr. Agur, do you have a created card design you want to go over?
Yeah, I got a couple here, and it's based around this concept I'm calling shy souls. So the idea is these souls, you know how you have remnant, and you're like, I don't want to draw you on turn one. Like, you're completely useless to me. You can't go to reserve. There's nothing to target. Useless. So the idea of these shy souls is the first part of their ability says you may create a lost soul token in your territory to shuffle this card. So basically it's just like, hey, like, I'm not ready to be used. I'm going to go back in the deck. You can use me later. That sounds good. So this first one I got here is called Shy Stricken. So it should be pretty self-explanatory. You may create a lost soul token in your territory to shuffle this card if you do not restrict, search, look, and draw effects in the next battle phase. So not exactly the same as stricken because stricken is a protect effect, but I like a restrict here. Basically, this one's like, hey, like nobody's drawing, nobody's searching, nobody's doing anything crazy. Like you're not doing a math you off. This is just a fight. We're not here to build up your deck or like build your hand up to 10 cards. We're just here to fight. We're not here to do anything
This is a battle. This is not resource gathering.
This battle is not about resources. So that's Shy Stricken. And then in the line of Remnant we were talking about earlier, I have Shy Remnant. So it's got the Shy effect at the beginning. And if you don't use its Shy effect, you can take a hero from discard pile or reserve. So I don't know if you could fit the whole thing on there where it also steals a character, but I was like, hey, this thing can save a hero. It can pull a hero out of reserve. Just a really interesting effect there. And I think one of my last ones here in the Shy. Okay, this one's really interesting. This one might be too overpowered, but I call it Shy Kangaroo. If you don't shy it, you get to choose character or non-character, balance all of the chosen card type and territories. Now that might be ridiculous, but I wanted to see if like a soul could actually kind of reset the board a little bit. Like it's not putting it in deck, so it's not fully resetting it. Like it's just resetting it for the turn. But what if it bounced? Like they put all their forts out. You're like, I'm going to bounce all of those and get an attack in without you having your Herod's Temple, without you having your Bethlehem Stable. Like I think it'd be really interesting. Or you could just bounce all characters to get a reset on characters if you're trying to get Unity down or something.
I think that one kind of is a little bit of the Wild West because you could bounce all of their characters if it's mid-game or late game, and you've saved this ability. You could bounce all their characters, get them to hand limit so they don't draw on their next turn because they're sitting at 16 potentially.
That's really good, yeah.
So that one does seem interesting for that. Does seem like kind of card that would fit into kind of one of those rogue like Rossetti type decks.
Yeah.
Something that's just trying to manipulate what you can play when you can play it and having to gather those resources and put them back in play again a second time. The one thing about the Shy abilities, though, I think you would run into an issue fitting all of the text on the card.
Yeah.
I don't know if like there is a mechanic that, similar to like star abilities, like you had an icon that represented this is what you do. I don't know if there's a way to kind of represent that on this if you were to have this suite of cards that do this ability.
And that's one of the things with the card creation is you always got to worry about the text length. I think these are close. These Shy Souls are close because the Shy ability itself is not that long. You may create a Lost Souls token in your territory to shuffle this card. If you do not, and then you get the card effect. But some of these might be right at the edge or right a little bit over it. it would be nice to have a keyword for sure, like a keyword for that, or something else like a star symbol type thing to represent it. But it definitely does limit, and that's why I couldn't put like the remnant having a take the character one. I'm like, if you get shy, you can't have the full text of the remnant. In fact, I don't think you can put remnant on the current text because they reduce the size of available text with the modern cards.
I wonder if it might, like if you're trying to do the remnant one, you could probably create a lost soul token if you do not take a hero and take defaults to play.
Yeah, that's good.
Or
that's a good point.
Technically set aside, and you just take a hero, and then obviously it would default to hand, and you could play it down if you want, and there would be no condition of them getting it back other than negating the soul in the moment, or you just have the character. Kind of like how thieves take your card, and they've got your card unless you find a way to undo it. So it might actually...
That's pretty spicy.
It is, especially if you can save and wait until they have a character in play to take. That is cool. I think they also balance themselves out with how easily lost souls are negated. I think we've gone a little bit in one direction to where negate neutrals isn't as popular unless you're playing Res Revealer. Mm-hmm. I don't know why all those cards dropped off except for Res Revealer, but from now until Nationals, I think there's going to be a little bit of a resurgence with those cards. Mm-hmm. I think people are going to slide them in as like a tech card, and maybe they're not going to play with it as much before Nationals, but I think at Nationals you'll see a few of those, but those cards are still easily slid into decks, and then you can negate neutrals. You have obviously several different ways to negate neutrals with, Woe, Son of God. You have some decks, especially like a Chad Soul Surfer deck, using the Manger to negate a neutral card in play. There's a lot of ways to get the ability off of the board if it is an ongoing ability, but these having the instant part of it. Mm-hmm. And I think we've seen players start to favor instant abilities on Lost Souls a little bit more because it's not even like they're worried about
getting negated.
We just want the instant ability because it gives me something now. Mm-hmm. It's kind of like we're living in the microwave generation of redemption players.
Yeah.
I want it now. I don't want to wait on it to cook.
So I have a few points on that.
Okay.
I think on yours, taking a character might have to be accept in battle because I think it's a little too powerful for the soul itself to just like yoink a character in battle. Like that may be kind of broken. Like obviously you get SI, but it's really hard in SI to negate a soul a lot of times.
Although there is a lot of neutral battle winning abilities in the new set, Israel's Rebellion. So
you got stocks and stuff.
Yeah,
but I think I don't know if they'd want souls to be the battle winners for those things. And the other thing I was thinking is it would be really cool to take a character that's really powerful. I don't know if that's too powerful. Like it's powerful, but I don't know if it's like that so powerful that it's overpowered. I think that's really interesting. So there's that. Oh, the other thing I meant to mention is Akeem is seeing a lot of play in Disciples decks as their negate neutrals guy. But yeah, I've been a huge fan of negate neutrals for a long time. That's a really powerful effect.
Yeah, I have not seen Akeem in Disciples in a while.
Yeah.
But of course, I'm not the authority on anything. But at Kentucky State, there was a lot of Disciple decks, and I saw him in at least one deck that was laid out. Someone was looking to make some changes or whatever updates, and I believe Akeem was in there. But as far as playing any Disciple deck I've played, I have not seen it come down recently. So that's one of those that like it makes sense to be in there. Especially, I feel like Disciples, they have a small batch of characters that are really powerful rescues, and they can afford to have an extra character in there that doesn't necessarily do anything. A little bit more than some other decks. Some other decks need all of their heroes to be able to rescue because they don't have just the insane... they don't have an enhancement that CBN, get rid of every evil character you don't control on a Meat Disciple, for example. Yeah. So any of the Disciples can come in and have an instant ability that... Or not an instant ability, but an enhancement ability to kind of wipe and win a rescue. I know that when I build blue, and I haven't built blue a lot this season yet, but I still believe in blue. I like blue. I just don't know if it's there yet on the competitive side.
Exactly.
But when I build blue now, it's hard to fit, who is it? Enosh, to negate neutral characters. But it's also the way I build Blue lately is there's not a lot of meek characters that I'm going to have in play.
Exactly.
Which also limits it. And I think that might be part of why we're seeing it more limited use across the board, is because players are playing less offenses that are going to guarantee you have a meek down, except for something like Disciples and GOC stuff.
Yeah. I think Ruth does it pretty well, but with David Harrow to God. But all those characters that were not convert to meek, that you're like, do I want to play it as meek, or do I want to get the ability? Like, I don't want to put this guy down as meek. So like the Disciples do it well, because the convert to meek are like, okay, I'm going to get a meek anyways, so I'm going to draw a bunch of cards. That's fine. Like, I don't care about that.
Yeah, you get best of both worlds with Disciples.
Exactly.
Which, I mean, I think that's part of the step up to that, and kind of maximizing those convert to meek abilities. And having 2 strong brigades too. Clay became really strong with GOC, and you have obviously Purple is pretty strong with stuff it got from GOC plus LOC.
Yeah.
So you have 2 strong brigades, and you can flip and choose as you play which one you want to do, and get the ability and have the meek benefit. So I don't know, maybe an offense like that is something you want to take a character from, with like a Shy Soul. Really cool. But you could also, if you wanted to limit it a little bit and you could fit it, you could also take a territory class character, so that it would limit what you can take. And most of the time, those aren't going to be in battle, so you kind of balance that out. But
that's a fun limiter, and it's something they have to think about. Like, I can't tackle this territory class character. He might have the Shy Soul come out somehow. So that's really cool. I like that. I
mean, I guess it would. If you just take a character that's territory class, though, like Fallen Star or something like that, it could be a little bit spicy.
Man, that's spicy. Maybe you got to pay some effect. Maybe you got to do something like discard a card or something. But like, that could be fun.
Yeah.
Underdeck a card from hand, take a character.
Yeah.
A TC character, that'd be awesome.
I guess built into your idea of these Shy Souls, and you can put any kind of ability on there you want. I mean, we can make fun of Tyler and say that create a token, you may draw 2, whatever. But you can take all of these souls, and you get the benefit of the soul when you kind of want to, but you're creating tokens, so you can maximize the meek soul portion of abilities. You know, like there's cards that you can do this, or you can also go to your deck or reserve if you have a meek soul in play. So you're kind of playing the benefit of both worlds, kind of like how people are doing with Lost Souls. But you're getting a better ability than just creating token. You're creating a token and getting an ability.
Yeah.
I think it's definitely a kind of cool design concept. I don't know if it's something that the elders would feel they want to do because of the potential benefit of getting the meek, and then on top of that, getting the ability.
There's tons of things to consider, how powerful it is, how it changes the game. And that's one of the things we do with these card creations, is we just throw ideas out there, and maybe this isn't what like sticks, but maybe it gives the idea for something else.
Yeah.
And I love that everybody's cooking in their minds like, I got like 50% of the idea I like, and the other 50% I'm going to discard and meld together something else.
Yeah.
I think it's really cool, that type of design process.
Yeah. I also like how we as players, and I don't know if all of your designs fall into this, but if this is the base level of where you want to be at for a card to actually get created, I feel like a lot of us with our designs will start up here because we're expecting them to get toned down to where, like when I did the create a card for winning teams with Jeremy, and we got to create a card, and you know they peeled it back and was like, it's going to be a little bit more basic. Like I tried to I couldn't do any crazy abilities, so I tried to play with identifiers, with references, things like that. And I ended up settling on my card, Eliezer of Damascus, and he gets a little bonus because he works with Cloud of Witness Abraham, Genesis 12 through 24. Yeah. So finding little nuanced ways to try to increase the power level beyond it. Yeah. Then so that once they edit it a little bit, you can drop down and you're still at a good level. I feel like some of the card abilities that get shared in the card creation channel are like pushing the boundaries just so that like when it falls. Like we shoot for the moon so that we fall in the stars type of thing. Yeah. And we're still in that realm. And, of course, Tyler's going to get it in slap draw 2 on it if he prints it. So you have to leave room in the text.
Give me all the draw you can.
I've never seen I don't think I've seen any cards that are like, this draw 2 seems forced and, like, actually is. But, like, the whole joke meme now is Tyler puts draw 2 on everything, whether he does or not. So that's pretty cool. All right. This has been kind of a cool conversation on your shy lost souls. I don't know if that kind of ability works with anything else, but it's kind of cool that you found a way to get a benefit now or save it for later in the game, since it's kind of a limited resource game as far as like once that ability is done on a lost soul, usually you're not triggering it multiple times. Mm-hmm. And these ideas are what you can expect with the Agur the Creator segment moving forward. So how does it feel to have a segment named after you?
Crazy. It's weird. Man, Daniel's going to come after me for the creator part. Man.
He said he's going to have his lawyer call, so you be expecting that call. I'm going to forward him to you.
Sounds good. Sounds good. He'll be in touch with my lawyer.
All right.
This week's Deck of the Week is presented by Your Turn Games. Join us as we take a deeper look at a deck that has sparked our interest and spotlight the mind behind it.
Dude, how cool is that?
How cool is that?
We're talking about the Deck of the Week. It's presented by our new sponsors, Your Turn Games, and it's just a great way for us to tie this back in and drive business toward Andy and Kelsey over at Your Turn Games as a way to thank you for sponsoring the podcast and helping us, reach new heights with our platform. We want to also help you be blessed with your business, so it's a nice way to incorporate that. And for Deck of the Week this week, we're going to do a little bit of cheese. We're not actually going to pick a deck within the community that's outside of us. We're also trying to use this first time with Deck of the Week. We're going to talk about your deck, Agur, that you've been winning with. We just talked about it on the power rankings not too long ago here, that you've done really well with it. But this also gives us a little bit of time to talk about like your mind for strategy and maybe also open it up a little bit. And since we're already talking about you, use this as kind of a bigger introduction of yourself to the community. Mm-hmm. Something that I didn't feel like we could fit in at the beginning of the episode because we had so much new stuff to cover. And then it was just like, all right, shut up, Hendrix, you're talking too much. Shut up, Hendrix, you're talking too much. So I'm going to open the floor up here. You've got a deck. We can start talking about that, and then maybe we can branch off and talk about yourself a little bit.
Okay.
Whichever order you want. I'll give you the floor. This is your opportunity. The only requirement is you do have to talk about the deck because this is the Deck of the Week.
Definitely. So, let's start off with a deck actually here. And I call it newspaper. It's white, silver, black, and gray. So it sounds like colors from a newspaper there. Basically, what this is my attempt to make a deck that was, let me back this off and explain first that last year I went to Nationals and I did really well in terms of not losing. Like I got a lot of wins. The issue was there were a lot of partial wins, and I believe I only lost 2 matches and drew 1, if that's correct. But I missed top 8 because of that. Just tons of partial wins. Partial wins in Redemption, partial win tournament play, they're worth 66% of a win. So if you have 3 partial wins, that's effectively a loss, and it's a full loss too. So that really adds up. So I was like, okay, I got to build a deck that's fast, but I still want to keep that balanced nature because I like having a balanced nature. I like being able to defend well and not just hope that things I hope I outrace them. I hope I win the dice roll. I hope I get them down first. So newspaper is my attempt to speed up, have a speedy deck, but it still have some stamina and still have some flexibility in it. So it's using the power of the resurrection with nativity and not necessarily all the nativity cards that people tend to play. I've specifically focused on the ones that can get you some card advantage, the ones that can pick off stuff in their opponent's territory. I'm not using like Elizabeth. I'm not using a lot of the nativity cards that rely on hand advantage all the time. I really want cards that are good on turn 1 if you band them all in for the resurrection. So this deck is a pretty balanced deck, but it's still very fast. Like you can easily win most of your games on turn 3 or 4 if you play the deck well, you pilot it well, and you're doing well. So I'm really enjoying this deck. It's got the gray and black for the ability to access the herdsman package, which is the Philistine armor bearer, herdsman, and Goliath. It also has access to Daenerys and Emperor Otho. Emperor Otho is an absolutely amazing Emperor with Herod's Temple out. Like, that's one of the best blocks in the game, because you activate Herod's Temple, you say, hey, am I good to block now? And they let you block, you just blow everything up. There's very few answers to that. I think Bearing Sins might be the only card that can answer that without you knowing about it already. So it's really hard to stop that block. They have to prevent Otho or something, but or negate your Herod's Temple. But unless they have protection already. If they have protection, that's fine. But it's a really good block against a lot of the attacks in the meta. But basically, yeah, the deck relies on one other thing is it relies on a lot of CBN characters, CBP characters, and I had a similar deck, but when I heard about Honeypot and I got absolutely demolished by Jay and his Honeypot deck, I was like, okay, we're tuning this for more CBP, CBN. Almost the entirety of the offense is CBN or CBP. There's a couple CBIs in there. There's 2 non-modifier and 1 CBI guy in there, but the offense is heavily strengthened by CBP and CBN. So if you're worried about Honeypot, I think this is one of the best decks you could think about. But I have a write-up on this on Land of Redemption. Really cool deck. Mary is an amazing card for just dealing with random stuff in your opponent's territory. Like, they got an Evil Woes, you take that out. They got a Goliath, that's a problem, you take that out. She's amazing. She also fetches her own Battle Winner, or, and this is the fun thing, she can fetch evil enhancements too with stars, because it does not say what type of stars she can get. So she can pick up good stars, bad stars, any type of star.
She's just a rock star.
Yeah, she's a rock star. This deck is so flexible. Philosophy is a great card. You can always drop that on your Nicodemus, but at the same time, you can drop that on your Mary to negate a card and strip another evil card from their deck, their hand. Just so many cool things. When I goldfish this deck, I can constantly get opening turns that have a huge attack. I'm tossing their next. I've seen their hand already. I know what they got in their hand. Lots of that information, and this deck is just really flexible, in my opinion.
Yeah, you mentioned information, and I think that information, especially pre-block of what the opponent has access to, is still one of the most important aspects of the game, and that's why I think one of my favorite cards from the new set is 20 Shekels, something that looks at a hand and still gives you a benefit. Like, we've got, from GOC, we've got, like, Temple Veil. You can look at something, that's great, but it really doesn't give you anything otherwise. But, like, 20 Shekels lets you look at a hand and do something. It's
funny you mentioned that, because this is actually one of the things we're discussing on the Nativity Discord that we have for us Nativity aficionados is, do we do 20 Shekels or Temple Veil? I personally believe in Temple Veil just because it does not take up your slot if you use it on Herod's Temple.
Yeah,
and I think that's huge, to be able to use New Covenant and Temple Veil and the Manger all on different fortresses. So, like, you kind of spread them out. And the nice thing about Temple Veil is you can just deactivate it and it does not get thrown away if they get rid of your Herod's Temple after that. So Shekels is amazing with Mary, though. Like, I'm not gonna lie. Like, if they have one evil character in their hand and then in their territory, you can plop that bad boy into their territory and Mary. There you go. You got a free rescue there, uncontested rescue.
Especially if they're sitting on, like, the Deceiver and they're feeling really confident about they're thinking in their head already a step ahead of you, like, you're gonna rescue, but I'm going to be able to go to any block, whether reserve or deck, and then Mary. You play it down and then you use Mary to reserve that thing. So there's a I guess more interesting lines of play with 20 Shekels, which makes me enjoy it more than, like, Temple Veil. But definitely it's very important for what you mentioned, the versatility of where you can locate this artifact.
Yeah.
To be able to free up your artifact slot for a more important actual artifact.
The funny thing is, we could talk about 20 Shekels and Temple Veil a long time. One other thing I like to note is 20 Shekels has an amazing ability to ruin Unity sometimes if they have dual alignment characters. If they have like this, say they have a Philistine defense and they have a Zacchaeus in their hand. They normally play as a hero every time, but they're like, let's put that Zacchaeus in there as an evil character now. You might have just ruined their Unity if they were planning on having Unity. You never know, but that's just really interesting that it can kind of flip the what they're expecting to do, because this is a unique card. There are some other redemption cards that play cards out of their hand, but they're not as good as this one. Like, this one is really good and really cool.
I think I really liked still the way that the Guardian obviously another person on the power rankings here. So a lot of people doing really well are playing some of these cards, but 20 shekels being played in his GoldenEye deck, and I don't know if he's still on that right now or if he's moved on to something else for this current Lackey Grand Prix, but he's doing really well. I wouldn't be surprised if it was GoldenEye. I just haven't kept up with it, but being able to use the Cloud of Witness Moses to stop their stuff.
Yeah.
Then you activate this artifact to bounce him, look at their hand, play a character, do my stuff, then drop Moses right back down.
Part-time
to where
Moses.
you have part-time Moses. And that's why I call it that, because it's so interesting. But you've built this newspaper deck and, kind of focus back to it. But how reliant is that deck on battle dominance? Because I know there's been a conversation happening about how the community kind of got away from battle dominance a little bit, but now it seems to be pushing back towards that as we get closer and closer to nationals. And I just wonder where your deck falls in that. I know you're using the resurrection and stuff for your big rescue, but if you get shut down with a complacent or something early on, does your deck respond well without using battle dominance?
Yeah, I'd say that, of course, complacent on turn one can be a huge pain if you're not negating it. But you have the Manger, you have Resurrection Revealer, and Son of God to get a complacent if they get it turn one, because you really want to drop the Resurrection turn one. Like, that's a huge source of gas. Like, you get the Bethlehem Stables, you get John the Fisherman plus the draw 2, plus you're probably banding in like a Zechariah or something. So you're drawing like 4 off the Resurrection. You're getting two cards out of your deck. The Manger is amazing. The Stables is amazing at supplying your offense with constant nativity cards. Like, you're pulling down Mary, you're pulling down Child is Born, all those things. So you really want a Resurrection turn one. And if they have a complacent down and you don't have one of those counters to complacent, it is kind of annoying. But the only 2 cards that really are super battle dependent are the Resurrection and Glory of the Lord. Glory of the Lord's amazing. But yeah, otherwise, you're not too reliant. The Star Bethlehem, you can use in battle, but you can also just use it before battle. And often with Star Bethlehem, you're just trying to get a protection for flight into Egypt in play, or with my deck now with Moses in it, you can actually draw like 11, 12. Like, if you use Star to draw 6 and then you shuffle away 7 cards, that's 13 cards you're seeing potentially. So, like, just make sure they don't have a herdsman or something like that. But yeah, it all depends on what. Basically, it's all context driven. Like, you don't want to just throw that out at the beginning of the turn and just get blocked by foreign wives. So if they don't have a complacent down, I usually wait to Star until I need to. But yeah, I wouldn't say this is fully vulnerable to complacent, but it's definitely something I keep an eye out. I try to snag that soul up whenever I can.
So I guess the next question I would have for you, and then I guess we can just open it up and let you talk a little bit, spotlight yourself here along with your deck. But Lost Souls, are you, I feel like I know the answer to this, but are you favoring the instant ability still versus any type of ongoing things to try to affect the board state? Where are you falling on that? And are you using both cycle souls?
So I think I'm kind of in the middle of that right now. I have 6 instant souls and 3 ongoing souls. So I guess you can count Hopper. So 7 instant souls and 3 ongoing souls. Wait, no.
You have 10 souls?
Exactly. I have 10 souls now. I don't know. I'm thinking after some. Yes, I have 5 instant souls and 3 ongoing souls. So
okay.
What we have here is, I think Distress is amazing right now. I think Crowds is amazing right now. And I think Lost Souls is amazing right now. So those are my ongoing. I guess you can count Lost Souls as both of them, because it does come down and instantly do its effect too. But I think those 3 are really valuable in the current meta. Distressed can often just really throw a huge wrench in people's game plan. If it comes down before Priest of Zeus, if it comes down before their negate neutral, like, you can really ruin somebody's day, like turn off their Jonah, turn off whatever they've got in their territory that's punishing you for doing what you're doing. I love Distressed right now. And we have Crowds. I think Crowds is amazing right now. Just, it's something that Matthew decks have to solve or Matthew is useless. And people will say, yeah, Crowds has a downside. And it is true. Crowds does have a downside. But my deck doesn't tend to worry about entrapping Pharisees as much as in those other cards that would punish you for having hand protection. Crowds, I just think it's amazing for what it does stop and what it does frustrate your opponent on. And then Lost Souls is just the best way to generate souls for your opponent. This card's insane, good, really powerful. I like it because I don't love games that are decided because, oh, they didn't have any souls. Like, I like having souls for both people to go after. And one thing is, Lost Souls is usually being pointed at me. I'm usually making the souls for myself first. But yeah, definitely really cool. And then the rest of my souls are instant. I have one cycle soul, I like to call them. So I have Grumbled. So I can fetch it up with one of my
Shepherds is so much better than Grumbled, bro. I'm just kidding.
No,
I'm just kidding.
We actually talked about this. I think I asked Josh Potrats and some other people on the forum, on the Discord, which one is better, and they said I think slight percentage edge to Grumbled. I'm not sure why, but there is a different, like, there's like a scenario that can possibly happen. So.
This is just the I guess the truthfulness of the fact that redemption players just have to have an opinion on something.
Yeah.
You can't ask them a question and then be like, whatever, it doesn't matter. It's like they've got to have a hard opinion one way or the other. Like, there's no difference in Shepherds and Grumbled for 99.99% of cases.
Hey, but that one out of 1,000 case, you're going to be like, man, I really wish I had Grumbled.
I really wish Josh Potrats had talked me into playing Grumbled instead of Shepherds. Yes, I'm sure.
That's my mindset. It's so weird. It's just like, hey, if these cards seem the same, is there a case where I'm going to want one of them over the other? And just tell me about that case. And I always love when it actually happens. You're like, oh, I read about this. It happened today. So like, that's always fun to go over. But yeah, so I have Lawless, I got Darkness, I got Hopper, I have Grumbled. And where's my list here? Let me see. I just changed it recently. But anyways, the basic good instant souls. I don't have Humble in here. That's one soul I didn't really need because both my offense and my defense have a ton of CBP, CBN characters. But yeah, that's... I forgot about... let's see. So Lawless, Darkness... Prosperity. So yeah, this really good soul package. I enjoy it. One other thing I wanted to mention for my deck real quick is that it also runs really well with my offense. Runs really well with Herod's, and that's one thing I've been switching back and forth on. I think that Herod's deck version is a little bit worse to Matthew. That's why I have the black gray currently, is because you get Denarius and you get Herdsman to reverse some Matthew draws. So that's one of the worst things that can happen to this deck is if a Matthew deck sees your hand full of a bunch of colorful nativity characters and they draw 6, 7, and you don't have an answer to that. So like, I love Herdsman for that type of stuff.
Yeah, that sounds like a well-rounded thought process there. Herods are fun to play, and they're also pretty agile and versatile, considering that, you know, we don't have new support coming out for them. They're still solid, and I think that'll probably be the case for a while. But being able to answer Matthew in a more direct way with Herdsman is probably fair to give them the black-gray the edge right now with the current meta. So
definitely.
Maybe at Nationals you just deck check both of them just in case, but I think you're on the right one for the current meta in this moment as of May 21st when we're recording this.
Definitely.
So I guess I will just open up the floor here. You know, technically we're doing it on the Deck of the Week segment. It won't always be this in depth about the person that we're spotlighting their deck, more so just about the mind for strategy behind their deck build. But being that you are the new co-host for the podcast, I wanted to give you the opportunity to introduce yourself to the community in a more direct way versus just your interactions on Discord and things. So I'd like to give you the floor to kind of introduce yourself and, you know, share whatever information that you want people to know out there.
Awesome. So my name is Jake Antonetz. I've been born and raised in San Antonio, Texas, or the surrounding area for my whole life. And 36 years old. Just got married 2 years ago to my amazing wife, Becca. She's from Brazil. And I attend my local church, First Baptist Church of Universal City. I'm a sinner saved by grace. They ordained me as a deacon there recently this year. So I'm definitely blessed in that. And man, I love this community. I love this game. But most of all, I want to serve God. I want to glorify God. And that's something I got to keep on fighting to do because, as I mentioned in my testimony, I mentioned this to the kids, I wasted my 20s in pursuit of just entertainment and games and hobbies. And I really want to make sure I do that in the proper way and balance it out in my life because my 20s were basically all about World of Warcraft, Magic the Gathering, the World of Warcraft trading card game, just anything I could just to distract myself from real life and I enjoyed the competition, but I just got lost in it. So I wasn't advancing in life. I wasn't moving forward. One thing I tell the students is I would go to church and sleep in the parking lot because my parents expected me to be out of the house while I was still living with them and going to church. But I'd rather get some extra sleep so I can play some more video games than go to church. So God's changed me. He's grown me, and I want to make sure that my time in redemption is meant as an act of worship. I want to balance that and glorify God in that. And I love that redemption just gives me the access to talk to people about our faith and just grow with people and pray for people. It's just a really cool thing. Yeah,
I think that's a great fit for kind of pulling what you said there about wasting your 20s and stuff. And I'm not one to talk or judge. That's not my place. But feeling like you wanted to do something that meant a little bit more, but still be able to have that hobby, and you get the intersection of faith and the hobby aspect is really cool. I hope that, long term, the podcast can be a platform for you to be able to do that in the right context and things. But I know that I am thankful for you coming aboard and kind of, I guess you do things in a way that makes me more aware of my own situation. There's been several times where the first thing before we do anything, you want to pray. I've never done that on the podcast. I'll just be open and honest. I usually just hit record and do my thing, but to constantly be aware of that is probably going to be long-term beneficial for me as well. So I thank you for helping my own awareness already, but I think the podcast could be a great fit for you doing, finding the right balance there. And hopefully we can do that long-term. So I am definitely happy to have you aboard.
It's been a blessing. And just to shout out, I'm part of a youth ministry at First Baptist Church of Universal City. My wife's amazing. She'll be back in the country in a couple of days. And I'm just excited to, man, this is an exciting time of life. Planning to go to nationals, and I'd love to be there, and it'd be really cool to meet a lot of people there. So just thank you for having me here.
Yep, absolutely. So with that, I guess that concludes the first deck of the week, which is also, I guess, your introduction to the new co-host on the podcast. So maybe it's co-host of the week. We'll figure it out, but we'll get ready to move right along to a new segment, which all of these are new segments here on the back end of the podcast, but we'll get ready to answer some of your questions with the community mailbag.
Now, it's your chance to join the podcast and have your voice heard as we get ready to answer your questions with this week's Community Mailbag.
Man, I love all of these intros just get me hyped for
so much hype. Yeah. This is pure fire.
Some people out there listening will probably be like, man, it's kind of lame, but I am stoked about it. But anyway, we've got some questions that have come in from you, our listening audience out there, and we are going to take some time to answer them. And these are going to be questions from up until Saturday, this past Saturday evening. Anything after that will go on to the next episode. So we'll be answering questions through that. So if your question came in after that, you don't get an answer, never fret. It'll be on the next episode, okay? So we'll go ahead and get started. You want to go ahead and hit us with the first one there, Jake?
Yeah, it looks like we got a secret admirer here. Anonymous says, how is Hendrix so ridiculously good looking and I think it has to do something with his OBS glow up that he always does.
Maybe you tech guys can tell us what the deal is. So I use Riverside FM to record. I load my camera, and it's kind of dull looking. If I open OBS, even if I close it right after, the camera becomes more clear, more bright, and it's just there. So it is now affectionately known.
Sparkling?
It's now affectionately known as the OBS glow up.
Yep.
But I would, I'd like to say that we are a few weeks past Mother's Day, but it's never too late to say that I get it from my mama. So
nice.
I would like to shout out my mother here on this podcast, even
Mama
though she
Hendricks.
will never listen. But we'll say that I get it from my mother, and we'll leave it at that. But
you gotta see the feed of these podcasts. He's got woodland creatures just coming in and just landing on his shoulder. It's crazy.
So whoever you are, anonymous, I appreciate you for acknowledging my mother's.
There is.
Yeah, passed down from generation to generation. So we'll move right along to the next question, and we've got this one from Mr. Booster Jones himself.
Yeah.
My buddy Brian Jones, and he says, would you like to see more chase cards in the game? And if so, what would you like to see? So This right here is a loaded question for me, and he knows it's a loaded question.
Yeah.
And he knows that I'm going to rant and ramble about this because,
I got rants for this too.
I absolutely would like to see more chase cards in the game. I would love to have some excitement when I open a box besides the ultra rare, especially a set like IR. And it looks like for the foreseeable future, we are going to be doing the 129 card sets, which I have no problem with overall. I think having a more condensed focus for a set allows the card design team to focus on card interactions and make sure that nothing is missed. And I think that that's a good way to do it for a small community where they're having to go out of their way to find playtesters who have the availability to help playtest and things like that. So I'm okay with the 129 card sets, but what kind of zaps and kills the excitement for opening boxes is once you get one copy of each of the 3 ultra rares, there's no ultra rare plus. Like, I'm just getting, I can't tell you how many Moses the servant I have. Can't tell you how many Israel's Rebellion, just those things. Like, there's no excitement for pulling the packs. Like, you're going to fill out the set quickly because it's 129 cards. There's no legacy rares. You have roots, but now, like, once you get a copy of all the roots cards and things, like, they're going to become almost, I don't think they'll become as commonplace to where they're like IJ to where people just don't want them. But they'll be to where, like, oh, I already have multiple copies of that, or I have multiple copies of this. And I think that there's things that could be done to increase the excitement of watching someone take a YouTube video, set up the camera and all that, and then open the box and talk about the cards. Like, once they get the ultra rare, like, what are you still waiting for on those videos? There's not like the high end chase cards, and I would like to see something there. So I'll pass it to you and let you say whether or not you would like more chase cards in the game, and then maybe we can brainstorm what we might like to see and how that would come about.
So my like philosophy for this type of collection is, I do like that. I would love for every card to be accessible to, like, even kids. Like, when I joined, before they had printed the fundraiser cards, the Second Coming, 3 Woes, they were $70, $80, $90. I was like, I'm not going to spend that much on that. Like, maybe I'll trade for it eventually after I've got a bunch of drafts in me and got a bunch of rares I can trade for them. But there's no way I'm just going to fork that money over for a 3 Woes. I'm going to fork that money over for the Second Coming. I like having at least the base copies of the cards being super accessible, like less than $10, like, type thing. So in that sense, I don't like ultra rares, but I do like chase cards. I like giving, like, alternate treatments. I like giving, like, I know this is, like, not in the frame right now, but serialized cards. Like, I like having stuff that the whales can chase and be like, dude, like, to talk about my play group, we got him. His deck is fully, like, blinged out. Like, every card that you can have an awesome version of, he's got, like, the foil version. If there's anything that's got
Jared might be my spirit animal.
Exactly, right? Like, he's got all the cool cards, and he enjoys that, and he can spend that money on the hobby. Like, he gets to do that. So, like, for me, I just want to have, like, give me the ugliest version of 3 Woes you got. I just need one for my deck. Like, I don't really care. Like, I love having that just like range. Like the people that love to foil out their decks, they love to get that stuff. I would love to see more foils, more of those things. I don't know how difficult that is going to be with the budget redemptions on, but I would love to see alternate versions. Say this is an Elder version. The Elders signed this one, or this is each of the Elders pick their favorite card. They sign like 100 of their favorite card, and they insert. I don't even know if that's feasible, but I love stuff like that. Like stuff that makes it like, oh, this one's really cool. It's 1 out of 100.
Like personalized things, yeah.
Yeah.
So you want everything to be accessible. So you don't want like rare versions of cards, but
I want the base
alternate
versions,
right?
Yeah.
So like an accessible base version, but then you're like, for a while we had Captain of the Host and the Strong Angel national promos, and they were the only rotation version of those cards with those specific abilities.
Yeah.
And those got reprinted in Roots, I believe. But for a while, you had that. You had Hopper really hard to access because it was a Fall of Man Legacy rare, Amalekite Slave, Death of Unrighteous, things like that. They got fixed in Roots. So I'm okay with like a fundraiser version of cards and having cards all be accessible. But on the other side of that, you mentioned the whales and people that want to chase that. And like that's a way for Jared to buy into this game and not only support the game, but also feel like he's able to like bring his personality and express himself through the game. And so I would definitely like to see things like that. I think bringing some kind of excitement or hype back to the Nationals release of a set. Like, what's the point of buying it at Nationals if it's not legal at Nationals yet? So I'm not getting a benefit of being able to immediately play it. And then it's not, it's available 2 to 3 weeks after Nationals. What benefit do I have to go ahead and buy it?
Just some Zoom tournaments, maybe.
Like, I mean, like seriously, like I want to support Rob, and I'm going to, like, obviously me personally, I'll go ahead and tell you disclaimer, I'm going to buy them at Nationals. But the thing is, like, I would like to have some kind of benefit for the fact that I'm one of the first ones. I'm standing in line to go and buy them from Rob. And Rob did a good job last year of incentivizing people by having old Nationals promos available that people could get for, with their purchase. They would get to pick out, you buy a box, you get a National promo from years past. That was a great idea to do that. But I'd like to have something in the box. Like, when I look at that card, I can know the memories of, hey, I bought that card at Nationals and I got that. Kind of like, I'm not saying they have to do alternate borders again, but alternate borders with Revelation of John and Cloud of Witness that released at Nationals was kind of a super cool concept. Maybe I think it's more cool because I didn't get to experience that live and I know of it after the fact.
Yeah.
But even if something's printed, like we had the starter decks come out when Nationals was in Iowa at Gabe's church, and they used the church logo on the card.
That's really
kind of a cool concept.
That's awesome.
I know that it would require, extra attention to detail to put that on the card graphics that's sent to Rob, and then we'd have to make sure it got taken off for the future printings. So there's layers to it. I'd like to see something to incentivize buying them at Nationals or to reward me for buying multiple boxes and things at Nationals. I think another thing was when they did kind of like the chase cards, or maybe they weren't chase cards, but they were like the full art ultra rares from previous sets in the new set. So you got the full art Shipwreck, you got the full art Second Coming. They went back and grabbed old ultra rares and made them that way. Now, we can't do that necessarily because ultra rares are coming out full art now as just kind of a standard. But what if you were able to get, an alternate art version of some previous cards from a previous set? Like there's an alternate version of Delivered. Delivered is one, and it's got like a picture of Jesus, and
that's cool.
I think it's supposed to be Jesus. It's got the hands extended, but it being delivered, I could also see it being Moses parting the sea, but I'm 98% sure, as I remember it in my memory, that it's Jesus. It's a cartoon version of Jesus separating his hands, doing his best Charleston Heston. But
nice.
there was a time when Gabe shared that as a potential artwork, alternate art for Delivered.
I got cut.
Yeah. And what if that just found its way into the next set as just a random throw in, stuff like that?
I like that. I really do.
I don't know what the best path forward for that is, but I definitely think that in order to keep the community engaged that's already, established players, I don't think it can just be new cards for a 129 card set after we were spoiled with, a large set with LOC and a large set with GOC. So not to waste forever on this one question, but I think I think something along those lines could be done to help build up my excitement for the new set. So do you have any other suggestions?
Yeah, I mean, I wish I knew how hard this was logistically. Like, obviously, like I have no clue how hard it is to get cards in foil, how hard it is to get new alternate designs and stuff.
Well, it's not hard if you. I'm not going to take the joke. That's low hanging fruit. If you counterfeit them, But
exactly.
We could ask him how hard it is.
I think it would be really cool. Like, if we get to the point where they can actually foil the full set again, and like every other pack has a foil in it, and it's just like a common foil, but like that's something like, oh, I don't have this in a foil. That's a really cool thing for a lot of players. So like, I don't know if that's in view, but yeah, I think it'd be really cool.
I know that logistically, that one, I believe foils are still coming from the old printer and not the new one that Rob switched to. So I think that would require getting printings at both different printers. So it would be a little bit involved, but that'd be a cool concept. I think more than likely they would do that with like just rares only potentially or something like that. But even if we just got to where ultra rares were, instead of like an ultra rare plus, just you had a foil version of the existing art, even if it's like 1 out of 10 boxes as a chance to get it, like super rare or even more, just something.
And we're not grumbling, we're not shepherds, but we're just giving our thoughts.
Yeah. We want to underdeck the current regime and draw a new one. But Brian did know exactly what he was doing when he asked this question, because he knew I would take it and run with it. So hopefully that got you some exciting content there, and maybe it starts a larger conversation, because that's kind of the hope with some of this stuff is that like we branch out. And I mentioned earlier on the podcast that the whole thing of podcasts is taking ideas and turning them into open conversations where you can toss the topic back and forth and get other opinions and things. And so if you've got an opinion, if you want to see more chase cards, tell us what they should be. Get out on the Discord and go into the suggestions and be like, I'd like to see this in the next set or something like that. But we'll move on to the next question. You want to take that one, Jake?
Yeah, that sounds good. So this is from Roy, Robar on Discord. What are some recommendations of pathways a new collector or player can take when they're ready to move beyond starter decks? I.e., is it possible? What possible next purchases, suggestions? What could they do after that?
Man, I tell you what, this question could not be more perfect. I think Andy might have logged in and be like, hey, now that I'm sponsoring the podcast, let me give them something to talk about. Roy. My name's Roy, and go to Your Turn Games, my man. But not going to just say directly go to Your Turn Games because they're supporters of the podcast now, but I'll tell you,
they shouldn't go directly. They should use our affiliate link, right? Like
the Threshing Floor sale to get 15% off on your singles. Maybe we should talk to him about getting a static affiliate link so we can see how many people are using it. But Roy, like I can just level with you and tell you exactly what I did when I got into the game, and I think it helped me tremendously. Now, I don't know what the deal was with Ken. Ken is the owner of Three Lions Gaming, and Andy, just calm down. I'm not going to tell him to necessarily go there. I'm just going to explain my story, okay? But when I got into the game, I bought cards from Your Turn Games, owned at the time by Derek Torado. And Derek, great guy.
The Watchman.
Yes, the Watchman. And I probably, up front with you, I probably spent way too much money on singles because I was like, I need this specific card. I need that card. So I ended up with a lot of investment into just one deck. Okay, so if you want to play a variety of things, it's going to be really hard for you to do that if you've invested all of your money for redemption into buying the singles for the one deck. You want to try a different deck? You've got nothing for that. Now, Ken at Three Lions Gaming had Prophecies of Christ, the full set of commons. And the full set of commons, he was selling them. I don't know how he was doing it, but he had them listed for $25.
Ooh.
So I bought the entire set of commons. And because I got that, I was able to look at different archetypes and different things, new abilities, and get more familiar with a larger pool of cards. And that allowed me to branch out and think about different decks that I'd like to build or tinker with and things like that. And I think that was really beneficial for me being able to see the game in a different light than just the perspective of I'm playing Flood and everything that I need to buy needs to go into a Flood deck. Now, I don't think you're going to find a set of commons anywhere for $25 these days which is understandable. Again, I don't know how that price was there then, but if you go to Your Turn Games and check out the site, there's rotation only grab bags. I believe they might even have like set specific grab bags. And these things can, obviously you're going to get a lot of the lower end cards, mostly commons and things for the price point, but it's going to allow you to open up and see a larger, variety of cards and abilities, and maybe see something that piques your interest. You could get a couple of these grab bags, mix and match. You could do that. And I think that would be a good next purchase if you're coming off of the starter decks, especially if you can find a grab bag that, is brigade specific to the things that are already in the starter deck. And maybe you can kind of spice up your starter deck as a step 2. And obviously, if you want to go beyond that, the game doesn't have anything like structure decks, which, Jake, you agree, right? Like that would be something awesome if we could get structure decks.
I'd love to think so. Yeah.
Something official from Cactus. But in lieu of that, you do have challenger decks, which are, on the level of starter decks, maybe a step higher. I don't really know what the power level is there. Mm-hmm. But then you have contender decks, which is kind of what would be like the structured deck of Redemption. So it would be kind of that level. It's not, highly competitive, but you can play it in a competitive scene and at least get to enjoy making plays and things that actually happen and not just entirely get shut down by, competitive decks. So I think those would be kind of the next steps for me, even if I was not, sponsored by Covenant Game, or I'm sorry, if I was still sponsored by Covenant Games, it's going to be a slip of the tongue for a while, guys. Yeah. But if I was not sponsored by Your Turn Games and I was still with Covenant Games, I would still probably say that that's the next best step, because I think it's almost like a market that Andy has cornered for newcomers to the game to be able to take those steps. So that's where I would lead. Do you have any additional suggestions there?
Yeah, Agur's got 3 quick tips here. If you're buying sealed product, always buy Roots right now, because when you pick up Roots cards, they're just like all Redemption cards have filler in the back of them, and the Roots filler is absolutely amazing. Like these cards, they range from tournament playable to just decent. Like you'll want to have a lot of these Roots cards. There's a lot of amazing cards in there, Hopper, Stocks, etc. There's a lot of good cards. So if you're getting cards, make sure it says Roots on them. So I'd say if you're focusing on sealed product, GOC and IR is where I'd start right there. So maybe 2/3 GOC, 1/3 IR if you're just buying sealed product. Another thing to do is draft with friends if you have that as an opportunity. If there's people around you that meet up to play Redemption, or if you have friends that you could just buy a box and just share the box with them and have them give you the cards afterwards, drafting is a really fun way to play the game. And it's the one thing about draft is that you can invite friends over. They don't need their own deck. They can just play with what you get from the draft, and no one's going to be like, oh man, I can't play against this guy. His deck is too powerful. The only person that always has a good deck in draft is Booster Jones. Everybody else has an average deck, Dude,
so he's magical. He's like the unicorn. Like there's only one of him. If you get close enough to him, you want to rub his head for good luck. Exactly. Because he's got insane limited categories or whatever they call sealed and booster, because he's good at both of those. And I don't know if it's manipulating the trades on those or, well, I mean, I guess booster, you don't have trades, but sealed, you can trade with your opponent. And dude is just otherworldly when it comes to those categories.
Number 3, try things on Lackey before you buy it. And if you're worried about like, oh, I don't know if I could spend my money on this, try it on Lackey first. There's a really great Lackey community for Redemption, and on Lackey you have all the cards there. And I definitely support the game, support Your Turn Games. But if you're interested in like, ooh, do I get this contender deck? Do I get this contender deck? Do I get this challenger deck? Play it on Lackey first. See if you actually like the way the deck flows for you. See if it fits your play style, and see like, oh, okay, I don't want you to buy like this expensive deck and then be like, oh, this doesn't fit my play style, I'm just going to quit Redemption. Like, try out some other decks.
Man, I hate this game.
Exactly, right?
Don't rage quit, okay?
Don't rage quit. Try it out.
There's different avenues for you. If you do get frustrated with the game, and I think that's just a healthy thing, is it's okay to take time away, take a couple of weeks and just reset and let kind of your body decompress the stress of this game, especially if you're trying to be, work your way into the competitive scene. There's a lot of good players playing Redemption right now, and you're not going to win every game, but don't rage quit. This is just your public service announcement to don't rage quit. Okay, we need you more than you know. We're a small community, and everyone that's here plays
Vibrant
a part
community.
in it. Yes, we're a vibrant community. See, me and you get the inside joke on that. Jaden will get the inside joke, but nobody else is going to get the inside joke. I think it's an amazing community, actually. But anyway, we'll move on to the next question. And this is coming from your math teacher. So whoever your math teacher is, we're going to try to solve this little riddle here. You have 6 dogs. So I have 6 dogs. Jake has 4 cats.
I do?
The cube root of 3,581,577 is 153. The earth is flat. So what is the best location to live in to win an RNRS title after accounting for difficulty of other players and also tournament accessibility? So what is the best region to live in to where you could ascend to the top of the tournament scene, but there's also enough tournament scene there for you to have access to RNRS points? I'll let you take first stab at this one.
You let me take first stab at this? I have like zero clue. Like, this is one thing I'm trying to learn is like where everybody in the community is located, because I saw them once at Nats and I see them on Discord all the time, but they're all spread out all over the place, right? There's like, I guess Central USA is pretty good. I think Texas is not a great spot for that because you're at the bottom, so there's few things that are close to you. Texas is so huge, like driving through Texas itself just eats away your time. So maybe the coasts or Central Texas, but definitely not Texas, I'd say on that.
Okay. I'm going to say this, and I know I'm probably going to make someone mad out there. So if anybody wants to come for me, that's why I was letting you go first as a buffer. But if you really want access to a lot of tournaments and you want to be able to win RNRS points, check this out. Since being in Redemption, and again, this might be met with some resistance, so I'm sorry for the people I'm going to talk about. But I think it's the Northeast. And I think the Northeast, they have a ton of tournaments. They do have some good players. You have, Mark and his play group there in Moravia. You've got, I'm going to say his name wrong, John Michelesian. You've got Emmanuel. You've got a bunch of talented players up there. Charles Loria. Like, there's a lot of talented players there. They have, access to a bunch of tournaments. And when I first went to Nationals for the first time, I went to Texas Nationals. There was RNRS points all over the place for Northeast, but they didn't necessarily finish. They weren't stacking the 1 through 3 in the finish at Nationals.
Okay.
I think Patrick Chavari finished 3rd, and he was from that play group. I think he's since relocated, but he was a good player from that play group. I think Charles Loria did pretty good, but I don't think he placed. I think you have a lot of players there, but if you will work and take into account, that you do have to be better than a certain baseline that is, a good player, but I don't know that they have that player that's at the top end, they don't have a Jeremy Chambers. They don't have a Jaden or a Justin Alstead. They don't have.
There's a power vacuum at the top.
Yeah. Like there's just, you could go, and if you can work your way through that group to ascend to the top, I think you have access to a lot of tournaments, and you could ascend and get to that point. So that's not me trying to knock that play group. I think they have higher quantity than top end quality.
Okay.
They could say the same thing about us. We have a lot of players, and then we just bank on the fact that Jeremy finishes in the top 3 in a bunch of categories. That's fine. I'll take that. But I think the Northeast is probably where I would lead, just because of the insane ability to have tournaments accessible to you. And then I think you could work your way and develop your skills to be kind of the top competitive player in that area if you really worked at it. So I think we can move on to the next one. This is your boy, Baboony Tim, put this one in. So you want to go ahead and run with that one?
Our favorite monkey says, what's your favorite thing about Nationals? So I got to go to my first Nationals last year. I was there. I was just like, I don't know if anybody saw me there, but I was just smiling like, this is awesome. There's tons of people here to play. Like, obviously it's not as big as some of the tournaments I've been to for other games, but like, it was so cool to see people gathered to play the game. That as a kid, I was at the book fair, just like with my Archangels comics and just looking through these cards. Oh, that angel's so cool, man. Like, I'm here and everybody's playing the game. There's a lot of competitive people, a lot of people I've met online. It's good to be just with fellow believers, fellow enthusiasts for the game. The community is awesome. The competition is awesome. I love all those things. So that's what Nationals is cool about for me, is just that atmosphere, right? The atmosphere of competition, of friendship, of all those things mixed together. Like, really cool. I love it.
I will kind of, harp on that same thing and say that my favorite thing about Nationals does not involve the cards at all. Like, it's everything else about the community. And my favorite thing that I've ever done for going to Nationals is when it was in Iowa. I picked up Jeremy on the way and I went to Knoxville. And then from Knoxville, we carpooled with Brian Jones, Tyler Stevens, Chris Fashman, Sean from his play group, myself and Jeremy. And we did the road trip. We met up with Andy at his church. We stayed the night there. Then Andy went in his car with his buddy, in tandem, 2 different cars traveling. We stopped and got lunch and things. And just the road trip atmosphere, just cutting it up. Like,
yeah,
in our group, like, we're going to cut it up. There's going to be jokes. There's going to be serious, deep talks about, like, we had our state tournament and we went to a sports bar type restaurant, where they have the bar there, but then they serve sports style, wings, burgers and things. And we sat down and we started having this deep, discussion about spiritual things and,
awesome.
Biblical principles and things, and how different people believe different things. And just out of nowhere, just this deep conversation developed. And it's the randomness of it can be a joke. It can be, this deep conversation.
Yeah.
But then you pack that for 10 hours in a car together.
Mm-hmm.
And then you get to Nationals and it's kind of the same thing, to where just the hanging out part of it, we always talk about, it's kind of like a family reunion, catching up with people you haven't seen in a year plus. It really is like that.
Mm-hmm.
And I know we can say it so much that it falls on deaf ears, to where it's whatever. But seriously, another thing about Nationals that I really love is, especially if you've never been to Nationals. So I don't know, Tim, if you've been to Nationals when you were originally involved in the game, or if this would be your first experience. But I know I was a little nervous going to my first Nationals because it's a card game. Card game communities tend to be a little weird. And they tend to be when you get in person and you have the competitive, nature of everybody competing against each other. Sometimes card games get toxic. Let's just be honest. They can. But what I was surprised to find out, and I one of my favorite things about the community is that it really is just like anybody that interacts with you on Discord, for the most part. I don't want to speak as 100% certainty, but all of the names that you can recognize and then put a face with that name, they're going to act the exact same in person as they do on the Discord. It's not like they're going to be this person on the Discord in the public eye and then you meet them and they're kind of a douchebag. I mean, there's not a drop off in who people are. It's not like they're trying to be 2 different people in 2 different forums. So I think that really put me at ease when I experienced Nationals for the first time. And ever since then, I'm just hyped to go back because I'm feeding off of that. The community that this game harbors and, creates is so much more than just the card game. The card game is just what we do, and the community is just who we are. And I think that's the best thing that this game has to offer. And it's put on full display at Nationals. And so that's absolutely my favorite thing about Nationals.
Really cool.
So we'll move on to a question here from Gabe. And Gabe asks, will Brad ever return? The prodigal son, will he return? Maybe as a special guest. I can't speak to any plans that we have that are concrete, but I will say that we left it on very good terms. Brad's still my boy. I'm sure he's going to end up listening to this podcast at some point. So love you, bro. Thank you for all your work for the podcast. And maybe Jake here can live up to your, your hype. But I can tell you that he still has all of the recording equipment that he had, the microphone, the headphones, the audio interface to be able to just plug up and have the same sound quality that he had before. I didn't take any of that. I bought new equipment for Jake. So Brad has everything he needs to be a high quality guest in the future if he wants to do so. or we need him to do so. And he did say that if I needed him to fill in a pinch or something over the summer, as he was able to, he would be willing to help spot me. So we're on very good terms there. And I think that it is very, very much, probably 100% certain that you will hear him at some point on the podcast in the future. A lot of these changes, in fact, that we've made to the podcast are things that I discussed with him in the year prior, and just never got around to making these changes. And then we just had a period of transition here to where I could make them all come to life. So Brad was very much involved in some of those, discussions to round out and come up with the ideas for what we've done here with the podcast. So definitely want to, again, thank him for his contributions to the podcast and, wish him well over the summer, because I know with his youth ministry, he is going to be busy. He's got mission trip. He's got youth camp, all the things that everyone always has. But then, of course, he's still got the fact that he's also an associate pastor at work. He fills kind of a dual role of associate pastor and youth pastor. So he has a lot more responsibility. Obviously, his family with 3 young girls at home. I've mentioned that before, that it's really demanding on him. So I'm glad to know that he has, room to operate and not feel like he's letting me down or the podcast down when he can't record and things. So I feel like we're all good here, and we'll see him again at some point in the future. You want to take the next one here? This is a loaded one from Mr. Mark. Mark decided if he was going to fill out this form, he was going to get his money's worth.
Dude, that's what I like to see. Good questions here in the mailbag. Mark Blake, he's a great guy. First question. Well, I'll just start with the first question. What are some of the best things in Roots, and how does it make previously unplayable themes playable? Roots is awesome. Like, I could talk about Roots for a long time. One of the cool things about Roots is, like, they have a lot of cards that are designed in Roots that are simple yet powerful. And I like Stocks as a great example of this. Stocks is just very, it doesn't blow your mind. It's not anything crazy, but it just does good work. Stocks is just an artifact that lets you capture a character in a territory, or actually just capture a character, which is actually really cool because it can go to battle if you activate it in battle somehow. But it captures a character in territory, limit twice, or not in territory. Captures a character, limit twice, and basically you're just using it as just like, hey, that character is really something I can't deal with next turn, or I don't want to have to deal with it next turn. I'm going to get rid of it. They have a Goliath in their territory. Goliath is good against my deck. Let's get rid of that. They have a Mary in their territory. Mary just got rid of my last artifact. Let's capture her instead. Like, it lets you pick off this stuff. It's not insanely powerful, but it's just good. It does what it does.
It's good utility.
Yeah, it just does good utility. And especially for draft, this is one of the things that's really cool about draft is this card will let you just, like, if they got the bomb hero, like, this hero is amazing. Like, they're going to keep on attacking you with every turn. I don't have an answer for that in battle, but I got this to deal with it outside of battle. Lots of cool cards like that. The Lost Souls in Roots are all really good. Like, they have Punisher, they got Hopper, they have a lot of good Wanderer, like tons of good Lost Souls in Roots. Holy Grail is an amazing artifact. They got an upgrade to a Gospel artifact. Lots of cool cards in Roots. I'm a huge fan of Roots. Count me as, like, one of its biggest fans.
Absolutely. I think that when you ask what unplayable themes become playable, I think some of that is still left to be determined, because Roots, even though it's been out for a little while now, I think people have moved into tournament season to where they're, the decks that they know about and the decks that they have tinkered with themselves is what people are playing and figuring out. But I think the fact that Honeypot was there at the Thomas J. Chambers Memorial Tournament forced people to recognize this as a strong deck, pick it up, try to play it, figure out how to beat it if they could. And I think that pushed us right into thinking about tournament level decks. And there's obviously still some people that are exploring different themes and things. But if you're playing games that matter and you're trying to win, you're probably falling back on a lot of decks that perform well versus just strictly exploring things. But just think about Honeypot. Like, was anybody playing that style of, that style of thing? Like, I'm going to limit you to one character in battle. I'm going to use this guy to make all of my, temple stuff. CBN, the guy from, like Persecuted Church or something, Eliezer or something. I mean, that's one right there that just jumps out. And okay, now this is a high-powered deck that people have to be able to answer, or it's going to sneak up on them and, slap them in the face. And that's all possible by Roots. And I think the next year or so, we'll still see some things come out and people play things in a way that like, oh, I didn't realize you could do that with Roots cards.
Yeah.
So I think it's still to be determined a little bit, but you also still see some benefits of being able to use some of those Roots cards in those decks.
And I forgot to mention Nazareth. Like, that's literally one of the most powerful locking cards in the game right now. It's also symmetrical, so you lock yourself out. But if you've got a good start and you drew like 10 cards at your first turn, you're kind of okay with locking down the rest of the game. And that card is like something to always be aware of. That spawns its own form of like gameplay. Like, that card is powerful enough to build your deck around. So there's lots of cool cards in Roots. Philosophy, lots of, like, you could talk about Roots for another 30, 40 minutes if you wanted to. There's lots of good stuff here.
Yeah, absolutely. So the second question, though, that Mark asked was, how many more sets need to be released until Herods are irrelevant? I kind of mentioned this earlier unintentionally, but Roots and IR have released with 0 evil gold support, and they are still a top tier defense. Mm-hmm. So how far down this timeline do we have to go before it is no longer good? And I think that's a bit of a loaded question, because that's the assumption that the card designers are trying to push Herods out of being a good defense. I think they built them intentionally so they would be good for a period of time. A reasonable period of time, knowing that they're not getting any more support specific to their brigades. There could be, dominant support or artifact support, fortress support, things like that are not brigade specific that could help them out. But I think that Roots coming out, IR coming out, none of that was developed in a way that we're going to try to push these themes out of the way that are of the brigades that have been cut from the game. I think naturally it's going to be replaced over time with something, but something has to come out that would be that replacement. And I don't think that they've intentionally tried to build a defense like Herods. Herods is really, it's a small package defense potentially. You don't have to play a lot of enhancements. You don't have to play a ton of characters. You can just play Deceiver potentially, and then have these Herods. You could have Herod's Guard, Herod Archelaus, Herod, maybe Philip, Herod the Great. And what's the Herod?
Herod Antipasta.
Herod Antipas, but a lot of people play him in reserve too.
Yeah.
Since he reaches into reserve and is dead on turn 1 potentially. But the
Herod the Great, Herod Archelaus,
Agrippa that's protected from, I think that's the one that's protected from more than
groups. Yeah. He's groups.
Yeah. So I think I don't know what the answer is here. I don't think that the card designers have decided that there's been enough time with Evil Gold to try to push them out by creating a nimble defense that can still pack as much of a punch as Evil Gold does with the Herods. So I think they're probably going to be here for the next couple of years at least. And they'll still be as effective, but I think the more people learn how the lines of play work and find different answers for them, they'll eventually start to phase themselves out a little bit, just because people will know exactly how you're going to play before you play. You're not going to pull any punches with them, so to speak.
So, like, from my thoughts on Herods, I would say that, like, I expect them to slowly erode away and losing share in the game. Like, already we see a little bit less of them than we did last year. And I think that's because Gray and Black both got some really cool new tricks coming up. Like, mostly Gray got some new stuff, but like Black it's been keeping up with that too. And with the recent release of, well, not release, but like the discovery of Ashkelon combo, Black has had another resurgence too there too. So I expect Herods to slowly lose their share for a while, but I don't think it's going to erode that much. I think you're going to expect them and respect them for years to come. I think another thing to note is that GOC was at the top of a power level arc for Redemption. Like, GOC was the culmination of the Of Christ block of sets, and it was the most power that Redemption put into their sets in a while. Like, we know that IR was meant to be tuned back a bit. Like, less complicated cards, not as blatantly powerful cards. Like to try to that's the whole thing about card games. You got to try to balance that wave of power level, and GOC was at the top of it. So Harrods are surfing down on this huge wave of power level. And it may be a while before we see another set that's as strong as GOC. And we know that the new card set does not have enough room for text, doesn't have the same amount of room for text as GOC does. So I expect to see Harrods out for a long time. And I think they'll slowly start eroding away, but they'll still be respectable. They'll still be good for quite a while, unless the meta changes crazy or they decide to go to a new powered set that's GOC style, super strong.
Yep. That's valid points too. The next question here, and Mark, you beat me in teams. We've got a little bit of a history. I'm not going to say anything to directly create any negative tension here, but you asked the question. I can only be 100% honest with you. So the next question is, what do you prefer as custom, unique / host supplied prizes for tournaments? Playmats, sleeves, tokens, dice bags, custom player cards like 2010 Nats. Is there any other ideas you have? Or have ideas been overdone, and how can tournament hosts freshen things up? I guess how can they freshen things up on kind of the swag that they offer at their tournaments?
Yeah.
And obviously, Mark has done a great job of offering things at his tournaments up there in New York. And so I think he's just asking so he can kind of stay on the forefront of cool ideas.
I think the first thing that comes to mind is you want to give people what they really want. And we know what John really wants. He wants Angel Wars packs. Okay, so you just flood him with all the Angel Wars packs. He will be at every tournament you host. He wants those Angel War packs.
I would say that is a negative because they're captain. But you ask, have things been overdone, or what the best way to freshen things up are? And I would say that I feel like some of the playmat designs have been a little overdone. And I don't want to knock anyone for their design and creative acumen, but I'm not a huge fan of here's this brilliant artwork, and then we just kind of slap a logo with a state tournament, all this information that feels forced on the artwork for it. I think, personally, the tokens for Thomas J. Chambers Memorial Tournament, they were foil tokens. They were angel tokens for Heavenly Host. I think that's a cool idea and something that can become kind of like a chase card element. But I also think, and I don't know what the cost is of printing this out, but it would be really cool if, say, your state tournament, Mark, there in New York, and assuming you're going to host it each year for the foreseeable future, if you had a first, second, and third place token for the winner of each category. So if you won third, you got the third place token. And only people that won third place got that token. Not even the first place, so that the third place person would have something unique to them. And then each year, you could do a different token design for the same thing. So somebody that's really good, maybe they won the last 3 years in a row, they can just lay out, okay, here's my Lost Soul tokens. It says I've won 3 in a row. What you got? That would be cool to me. Something really like cool. That. And it's kind of subtle. It's not as overdone as card sleeves and playmats. Again, playmat designs are awesome. I just think that sometimes they get a little too busy with the forced information of all of everything put on top of the artwork instead of letting the artwork live itself and have room to breathe. But I do think custom sleeves are cool. I just really like the idea of the unique to the one individual that won each category, and you could even spice it up and potentially get a token made for a different artwork for first place in each category. So the booster first place looks different than the type 1 first place, and they're just one-offs that only that one person has. I think that would be kind of cool for state level and regional level tournaments to rival kind of the collectability of Nats promos. Obviously Definitely. Not the same thing, but kind of in the same vein. So what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I do like an occasional playmat. I won one from the Rob M Zoom Discord Invitational this last year, and that was really cool for me. He helped me design one, and now that I got it, I'm like, this is a trophy that I get to take around with me and do stuff with. But at the same time, like, you could only use so many playmats, right? Like, after you're like, okay, I have 5 playmats now, I get another one, okay. But I like tokens. Tokens are really cool. You can always have a whole stack of tokens, so you're never really going to be like, oh, I have too many tokens now. Like, tokens are awesome.
Yeah, and with All Souls out, you're going to need them.
Yeah, and you might actually, like, there's a guy in the community that runs these special cutout tokens and like wooden chips and stuff.
Zombie.
Yeah, like, and if you can like get him, if you can have him like design things specially for you, I don't know how much money you're willing to spend, but it looks like you're investing in it. Like, maybe you get him to design some special ones that have your state logo on it and like that you get to use. But I don't know. That sounds like something
that would be cool. So you flip it on one side and it says like my woes target. The other side says New York State Tournament 2024. Just something like that to give away. That'd be really cool. I think subtle ways to shout out your play group in your area without, like, at a certain point, like I've got like what feels like 20 play mats. They don't, at a certain point, they're not, unless it's some over the top, like, wow, this amazing design. This is the play mat I'm picking up every time because I love it so much. If you're building that and designing that play mat, go ahead and do it 10 times out of 10. But if your play mat, you don't know 100% that this is one of the best looking play mats you've ever seen, then it's going to eventually just be another play mat. But there's not just going to be another token, whether it be the wood tokens or an actual card token. And the game is moving in a direction to where you just need more card tokens anyway. The accumulator tokens, like, you can make that.
Yeah.
Cool accumulator tokens. People play accumulator, they can play your token. And it just, the possibilities are endless. And I think that would be the way that I would chase it down, or even like custom dice, things like that. People have to have dice to do the random method at the beginning of the game. Subtle ways to shout out your play group and your tournaments versus the kind of expected way to do it.
Yeah. Now that's a cool idea. Is you could start photoshopping your face into the heavenly host tokens, or like the elders. I got that full set of the elders as heavenly host tokens.
No, don't really get funny. Poor Mark in trouble now. But I definitely think that these questions have been really engaging for us to answer. And again, like I said, we're a blank sheet of paper. We're like Michael Scott at the job fair. It can turn into anything. And we handled a good variety of topics here on the first community mailbag. It went way longer than I expected because we're approaching 53 minutes.
Oh, man.
So this is going to be a pretty long episode for you guys, but I know you're not going to complain. I've got a lot of work to get this edited and out on time tomorrow, probably going to be in the evening. So by the time you hear this, if it is in the evening, know that I realized this last minute that it was going to take till the evening to get it edited, but I'm going to do my best. And I will go ahead and apologize for kind of maybe the jank way that it felt like we were working through this episode. There was a lot of content to go over. We wanted to introduce these new segments. We'll do better coming up with, ways to lay it out. Me and you will work better on our, way to go back and forth here. Our, mic work, sharing the airtime. Just a lot of things for us to work on, but obviously, hopefully you guys can see the improvement of the podcast and the overall product. And I think that the future is bright on the podcast.
Definitely.
I feel like we made a lot of changes, but I feel like all the changes were in the right spirit. And I think we've got the right co-host. I feel like we've got a great sponsor for the podcast to where we can work together, symbiotic relationship to benefit the community. And I think that's going to be awesome moving forward. So definitely want to thank you guys for listening here. And if you're enjoying this episode, if you are excited about the future of the podcast, we're thankful for that, but also take the time to go and support our sponsors now at where are they at, Jake?
yourturngames.biz.
yourturngames.biz. And I think we'll leave you with that, and we'll try to be better next week. Peace.
Agur signing out.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Threshing Floor Podcast. Help us grow our community by leaving a rating and review wherever you listen to podcasts. While you're at it, be sure to subscribe or follow so you don't miss the next episode. And we'll talk to you next time on the Threshing Floor Podcast.